No one but my mother, and I know that almost every meal I make for her is revenge. I have never told anyone this, not even my husband, but it happened again tonight, and I'm feeling a bit giddy because of how well it has worked yet again, so I want to brag. I'm aware I'm a piece of poop, part of why I haven't told anyone. When I was little, my mother wanted to use corporal punishment on me, not my siblings, never my siblings, but because I was such a bad kid, she wanted my dad to hit me. My dad flat out refused and told her that if she did, he wouldn't be able to stay with her because he didn't want anyone hitting his kids. My dad was abused pretty severely as a kid. It's a whole other story. I can't get into it too much, or we'd be here all day. So, instead, whenever my mom was mad at me, she would give me spicy food to eat, even though I hated it and it made me sick. Like, full-on stomach cramps, diarrhea, the fucking works. She would only do it when my dad was at work, which was most nights at dinner, and whenever I asked for something else to eat, she would break down and cry over how much time she spent on my food. Don't I love her? Guilting me into hurting myself. When I turned 16, I was meant to start taking over more of the chores in the house, including cooking dinner twice a week. My mother hates pasta. She hates it. It's a texture thing, and she claims it's always slimy. One brilliant night at 16, after my father began working morning shifts, I was mad at her for screaming at me earlier in the day, and I realized I could do something about it. Since that night, pasta is one of the only meals I have cooked for my mother. I load it with sauce and sometimes make things like baked spaghetti because she hates the way the top of it looks. Whenever she tries to turn it down, I put on Waterworks, shake it, and look at the table. You've always eaten it before. What did I do wrong? Are you mad at me, Mom? And because either my dad, my husband, or other people's opinions she cares about are there, she's never called me out. I'm 26 years old, and I intend to do this for every meal we share, or until she cuts me off. I'm not gonna be seen as the bad guy here for not keeping the family together. I honestly don't care if this makes me a bad guy. She sucked, and this is my pettiest form of revenge. Watching her try to keep a straight face while choking chicken Alfredo is the highlight of my week this week.
Start and of while you're in a relationship? Good luck ever getting a job after college. I really don't care what anyone says. If you have OnlyFans, you clearly have no respect for yourself, and I don't think it's much to ask to not do intimacy work while you're in a relationship with someone. I guess my ex-girlfriend didn't feel this way, and that's why she decided to re it up while dating me. My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year and a half now. We have an open relationship and she has a girlfriend that she spends a lot of time with. Me on the other hand, I enjoy hooking up with girls, but I don't really like pursuing a girl after we've been physical. This arrangement works well for us, and when we first started dating I felt like I had found the coolest girlfriend in the world. I would have never thought she would turn around and stab me in the back like she did. Just for some context, I am very well off and my parents have always given me a pretty hefty monthly allowance. It's enough that I don't really need to hold a job down to afford bills or a place to live. My girlfriend on the other hand comes from a poor background, and is currently trying to pay off all her student loans. She had been telling me for a couple months now that she really needed a side gig because she felt like she was drowning her debt. She moved into my apartment about 3 months ago, and since then we have been splitting the bills. There have been a couple times where she said all the new bills were making her feel pressured and anxious, but I reassured her that she could figure it out and that I know she's a hard worker. I was supportive and I always comforted her when she was worrying about money. Well, this week, one of my friends sent me a link to someone's page. When I clicked it, I was floored to see it was my own girlfriend's of. She had been posting content for about a month. Now, I'm the kind of person who needs to get even when I feel like someone wronged me, so that's exactly what I did. I downloaded all of her content and sent her nudes to the company she interns for as well as some of her professors at school. I'm sure she'll get fired and be humiliated once she returns to campus. I did all of this without telling her I knew her secret, and the next time she left the apartment I put all her stuff out on the sidewalk. That's when I finally texted her that she could go find a new place to live and a new guy to mooch off of because I was down with her. I blocked her before she could reply, and had a relaxing night in my apartment, alone. I proposed to my girlfriend today. She said no, and it made me fall in love with her even more. So how does this shit work again? I had an account on here a long time ago, but I can't remember my login info for the life of me, so I made a new account, but damn, things have changed since 2015. Today I proposed to my girlfriend. We have been together for over 5 years and her parents have been pressuring us to get married. Yeah, some parents are like that. I am not into marriage at all, but I love my girlfriend, and if it is important for her, it is important for me too. I was nervous about the whole fucking thing, to be honest. Do I want to get married? Am I doing it for the right reasons? Don't get me wrong, I love my girlfriend more than anything, but marriage is a big ass step in someone's life. I bought her a ring, and I decided I would wait until her birthday to pop the question. I wanted that moment to be strictly her and I. It was our moment, our next step in our relationship. Man, I was shaking so much when I put a knee on the floor and asked her. She laughed at me and said, "What are you even doing, dude?" She said no, but not because she doesn't love me, far from that. She said no because she knew all along marriage was not something I was comfortable in. She said she did not need a ring on her finger to know she loves me and want to spend the rest of her life with me. She said that the only thing that mattered was her and me, not what our families think. We've returned the ring and we use the money to spoil ourselves, like the perfect immature adults we are. Man, is it even possible to love someone so much?
What did you do drunk, that sober you really appreciated? We booked out a hotel room and got trashed before going out.
Think 6 guys chugging on a ton of beer and eating snacks for about 5 hours. There was a lot of stuff strewn around the room, topped off by a few smashed bottles in the bathroom, because my friend thought the bath was full of cold water, but it was actually empty. I ended up coming back before everybody else and fell asleep. When I woke up in the morning, the room was spotless. My friend who was sharing the room with me told me he came home to find all the empty cans crushed and bagged up, with all the snack rubbish in the bin. I'd even gone into the bathroom and picked up every shard of glass, and made sure I'd washed the small shards out of the bathtub with the shower. I'd even cleaned the surfaces. The maid service would have had literally nothing to do other than make the beds. Meant that when we woke up the next morning, feeling worse for wear, we had absolutely nothing to tidy. When we went to our friend's room, which we hadn't spent any time in, they'd absolutely trashed it in between getting home and falling asleep. I don't think my friend had ever loved me more than he did that morning.
My roommate's unhinged boyfriend moved all his things into my room while I was on a long trip. I stopped his plans of moving in and made her break up with him. I met Lana on a roommate website, and we clicked well. She's a bit younger but seemed mature. We quickly agreed to be roommates and have gotten on really well so far, up until this. I found the place first on my own and put down a deposit to take it off the market while I found another roommate. Because of the above and that I was there first, I took the bigger room naturally. We moved in 8 months ago, and I have never heard Lana complain. Because I have a bigger wardrobe space than she does, I told her she's welcome to store her off-season clothes there, or whatever she wants to store. She was happy with this. However, just over a month ago, I went traveling. Now I'm not the biggest fan of having people in my room, but I told Lana if she had someone stay they could sleep in my bed. She said thanks, and as she's been such a great roommate and rarely has guests except her boyfriend, I didn't worry at all. I came back yesterday. I was exhausted from the flight and traveling and just wanted to shower and sleep. As I walked in, Lana was in the living room with her boyfriend. We said hello and hugged, and had a very quick catch-up. Then I dragged my suitcase to my room, opened the door and found it full of stuff that was not mine. I kind of yelled what the F? And briefly thought I was so jet-lagged I was confused, but opened the door to Lana's room and saw all my stuff. I walked into the living room and asked Lana what was going on and she said, "Oh sorry, I forgot to mention, we put my stuff in your room just because it's bigger and you weren't here and you said I could use it." I was honestly so tired I could have passed out then, so I probably wasn't in the best state and told her to move it all back immediately. She said they were in the middle of making dinner and I looked tired so I should have a sleep. Her boyfriend then said, "And anyway, you pay the same rent so isn't it fair that you both get the big room at some point?" I was getting really frustrated. And could feel tears welling up so I just said we'll deal with this tomorrow, and it's getting moved back and then I went to sleep in not my room. I've woken up now and I'm so pissed off. Lana's at work so I can't talk to her so I just moved my stuff back. It's taken hours and I'm knackered but I think if I left it another night it would be a real problem. I sent her a text when I was almost done to say, "Hi Lana. Hope you're having a nice day at work. Just to let you know I'm moving my stuff back into my room, didn't want you coming home and walking into the wrong one." She didn't reply to me, "Fine whatever," but she didn't kick off so I figured we were okay. She came home as I was sat in the living room and gave her a very cold hi when she walked in. She sort of froze, bag in hand, and her eyes darted between me and our bedroom door. She blurted, "Did you do it?" And I said, "What, move the rooms back?" "Yeah, of course." And her eyes went all wide and she dropped her bag and ran into the bathroom. I could hear her talking on the phone so I guess Tom's coming round. I heard the door unlock and I was about to go full Hulk on how psycho she is, when she came out of the door and stood between our bedrooms. Their doors are adjacent and she just stared between them both, breathing heavily. It was really odd. Then I noticed she was crying and getting a bit panicky, so I asked what was going on. She burst into tears and said, "Oh my God, he's going to kill me," and just sobbed. So yeah, it was the boyfriend's idea completely. Lana has a bit of a breakdown, and it turns out Tom has always been a bit very jealous. When I left he just finished school and basically moved in unannounced, and when she'd mention he hasn't been home in days, he'd give her the "What, don't you love me, I treat you so well, you're so selfish" shit and refuse to move. She showed me the texts he sent her, absolutely horrific stuff, things like "Ring me in the next 5 minutes or wherever, send me a picture of you at your desk with something showing today's date so I know you're at work," just abusive stuff. Onto the room, as we guessed, he moved it. He did it while she was at work, which is actually a bit gross thinking of him going through my stuff. Lana came home and said, "What are you doing?" He made out it was just temporary and that I wouldn't mind and he would move it back, and he was doing for her. When it got a few days before I came back, Lana suggested moving it back, and he completely denied he said that and told her it was her idea to move it and he only did what she told him but it's staying now or she'd be sorry. So basically Tom is a prick and Lana sobbed and apologized and cried and I fed her wine. She didn't want to see Tom, who obviously assumed he lived there now, so I texted him from her phone saying our landlady, my aunt, was coming round for an inspection and staying for dinner after with my family and he couldn't come over tonight. He sent a lot of begging, whiny texts, and then went on the offensive and called Lana a liar. Lana broke up with Tom. Well, he blew the fuck up. Called her every name under the sun, switched back to apologizing and saying she was the love of his life, then said she'd never find someone like him, then he would die without her, then he wanted to kill her, then they were soulmates. It was insane. He started messaging me too, telling me I was an evil bitch who had ruined his perfect wife, and as predicted, her family and friends got messages too. We both turned our phones off to ignore it and just watch TV. Later I briefly switched mine on, where I had a lot of messages from my friends telling me to block some guy on my social media. It was Tom calling me every one imaginative combination of the C word he could think of all over my Instagram page. The next day he rang Lana's office to tell her he was driving down to our flat. She rang me, and I rang my aunt, who told us it was time to call the police. We filed a report about Tom, and they said to update us on the situation. The police rang Tom, at our request, and told him they'd seen the messages and to turn his car around because if he turned up at our door, he'd be arrested. Tom managed to shit himself hard enough to not show up after that.
Update: kicked my golden child brother out for cussing at me. After reading your comments and discussing them with my BF, I decided to call my mother and explain what really happened. So, I called, tried to tell the story from my perspective. I started off by saying, I am not her and her worldviews do not necessarily reflect mine. She interrupted me 100 times as she does. She did not even try to see things from my side. As we all guessed, she sided with my brother. It was an 1-hour call, so I might skip certain things, but I remember her blaming me for leaving food in the refrigerator for my brother. Apparently, paying the bills, cleaning, doing the laundry and cooking are not enough. I also have to call him to the table and make sure he does eat. Her exact words were, "You are treating him as if he is a stray dog." I will let this sink in for you guys. Surprisingly, she did not know my brother does not pay for anything. It is very convenient that my brother forgot to tell her this. She denied always siding with him. I told her to give me one example when she sided with me. She could not. Well, of course. At the end of our call, I told her I am used to not having a mother in my life, but if she truly loves my brother, she should stop spoiling him. He never had a GF, does not have friends, and is the most selfish person I have ever seen. He expects everything to be served on a silver platter. She was shocked, as if she never realized that my brother doesn't have anyone beside us. I told her to think about what I told her and call me back in 2 hours if she agrees with me. She did call to my surprise and told me that I am a very compassionate and a good-hearted girl. This could be the very first time she ever said something nice about me. I thanked her and asked for a favor, but she will have to accept beforehand. She agreed, and I told her to stay out of our arguments with my brother. He always thinks he is in the right because she sides with him unconditionally. It is always 2 versus 1 against me. We will see if she keeps her promise. Later that night I walked in my brother's room and told him I was hurt, not because he threw the TV remote or not following my rules, but because I don't deserve to be called names in my own house at the age of 28. He apologized for swearing and screaming and agreed not to do that anymore. I told him I am not the sole decision maker in our house and I have to respect my BF's wishes as well. Since he has been a burden for us emotionally, financially and physically, we both appreciated if he could find his own place as soon as possible. I told him even though he kicked me out, I will never do that to him. BF told him he can stay with us until he finds his own place. He is still with us. He tries to help around the house. Yesterday he asked if he could watch TV. LOL. BF knows he is a keeper now. Thank you all for your kind words, and I apologize if I offended anyone in any way. My high school sweetheart left me to have fun in college and expected me to wait for her. Now she expects me to take her back when she spent 4 years letting anyone in her hole. We had been together since we were juniors in high school. We were each other's first everything, and I thought that we were going to be together forever. But she went away to college, and midway through her freshman year she comes home and tells me before she leaves that while she loves me with all of her heart and I am the one she wants to be with forever and marry, that while she is in college she does not want to be tied down and needed to be able to have her fun. She was telling me this as though she were explaining the directions to hooking up a computer. In other words, no emotion, just simply statements of facts, and my thoughts and feelings on the situation did not matter. She even went on to tell me that she wanted to make sure I knew she would always practice safe intimacy for our future together. Well, my reaction, I guess, was not what she planned. Needless to say, I'm not very proud of how I reacted at the time, but I became very emotional with her. I begged her not to do this and that under no circumstance would I ever consider this okay. She basically said I was being immature and that once a couple of weeks passed I would be able to talk to her rationally. Oh, and as a bonus she wanted to get my assurance that I would practice safe sex as well for when we got back together. The 2 weeks went by and she called me and acted like no big deal. But as we started to end the call she wanted to make sure that I was better about her sleeping with other guys. I used the present tense because as she then informed me in that 2 weeks she had already slept with 2 other guys. Again, not proud of this now, but I broke down when she told me this. She said she did not want to hurt me so she wouldn't be telling me any more about what she does. I told her that I had no desire to talk with her anymore. Period. That I was willing to work on things before she slept with other people, but that was the end of it for me, and I told her I was done. She said once again that I was being immature and that she would just wait on me to contact her when I was grown up enough to understand that there is a difference between sex and love. That was the last time I spoke to her until about 1 month ago when she moved back home and showed up at my house one night acting like we had been together and not apart for 3 years. She did not expect nor appreciate my reaction to her showing up. I opened the door and there she was with a big smile on her face. She immediately asked to come in and I said I would come outside, which obviously caught her off guard. I asked what she wanted and she said, and I quote, "Well, that's a hell of a way to greet someone you love." To which I told her that she was delusional and that whatever love I had for her died the day she told me she had already started having sex with other men. She honestly had a very confused look on her face and then said, and I quote again, "Are you still uptight about all of that?" And then said, "I would have thought by now you would have grown up about that." I told her that not only was I not over it, that I would never be over it other than to be over us. At which time she proceeds to say to me, "You mean to tell me you are throwing away everything that we are together because of some stupid physical issue? I know we love each other and are meant to be together, so how do we fix this?" I was just dumbstruck. How in the hell can one person be this stupid? I asked her what I was throwing away. We have not spoken in almost 3 years other than via text, and even then it was her texting me and not me replying. She left very disappointed, and that should have been the end of it. But here is the kick in the butt. I have now been inundated by friends, her family, and hell, even some of my family wanting to know why I was throwing away someone so special. I ended up telling my family members the truth, and after they heard about it they quickly recanted and told me to tell her to F off. But to her family I just said she dumped me years ago and we hadn't been together for almost 3 years. This came as a shock to them, as she had been telling them all along that we were still a couple, and even when she was home on breaks would tell them we planned on marrying. At first they didn't believe me that we hadn't seen each other in years, and I'm still not sure they do. But the friends are the ones that piss me off the most. They know the truth and yet they think I'm being weird about all of this. They said when you are young you are supposed to play the field, but if you love someone you know that in the end you will be together. I don't have enough time to write out all of the words I said to them, but I can assure you it was laced with lots of curse words. I am now down a few friends, but in my opinion they weren't friends really anyway. Here is why I'm here. I feel good and confident about my decision. However, because I have had so many people question me, I am here to ask anonymous strangers this. Am I wrong? Should I have just accepted that she was going to play around, and now that she is older she wants to settle down and start a family? Am I just so out of touch that I don't want to be with a person who would want to do that and then spend the rest of my life with them?
My boyfriend faked a proposal, so I broke up with him. Me, 24 female, and my boyfriend Andrew, 26 male, have been dating for 5 years now. We've had a healthy and stable relationship, up until today. Andrew has always been a prankster and makes jokes with me all the time, and I do it to him too, but today he took it way too far. In the morning he woke me up at 7 a.m. and told me to wake up because he wanted to take me to the spa. I was pretty surprised because it wasn't a special day or anything, but I was all in for it. At the spa he told me how he wanted to go to a fancy restaurant after we were done at the spa, and that he was paying. Of course I agreed, as we hadn't been out together in a long time. We then got to the restaurant. We had a beautiful and romantic dinner and just a nice time in general. We were talking about a house we were planning to move into and chit-chatted about other stuff too. After around 40 minutes, Andrew stood up and got on his knees and took a box out of his pocket. My heart stopped beating. I hadn't even predicted this. We have never talked about proposal before, but I also thought it was a great time now. He did a speech about how I was the most beautiful girl in the world and how he wanted to live with me forever, and ended with, "Will you marry me, my princess?" Of course I said yes. Seconds later, all that excitement turned into horror. He opened the small box I expected. He put the ring in, and in it was a note saying, "You've been pranked," and Andrew started laughing hysterically. He continued with, "Baby, this was just a prank. I'm not ready at all to marry you yet." He was leaning in to hug me, but I gave him the biggest slap ever with tears streaming down my face. I just told him, "We're over, you effing scumbag." I am now sitting in my bed crying and writing this, and I don't know what to do. He's been texting and calling me, but I haven't responded because I feel so sad, betrayed, and mostly angry. I thought this was going to be one of the best days of my life. What should I do?
My freeloading relatives don't want to chip in on groceries and utilities and chose to move out. Now, they are regretting their choice and begging to come back. Some of my relatives moved to the US a few months ago. My parents let one of the families live with them. My parents live in a very nice, walkable city. Unfortunately, it's also very expensive. My parents' apartment would easily cost $4.5K a month to rent, where they live, so despite it being a tight living situation, it was the only option currently for the relatives who just moved. They had no money, and no credit, and their jobs would for now be limited to minimum wage jobs. We fronted the cost of their immigration fees, got them phones, found my cousin's free English classes at a public library a 5-minute walk from my parents, got my cousin's jobs at a Dunks that's about a 1.5 miles from the house and a 10 to 15 minute bus ride away. My parents found my uncle a job at a Dunks slightly further away, but still less than 2 miles. However, he couldn't get past the training. My parents continued trying to find him jobs, but it took longer than expected. At May refused to work. Still, both the cousins had jobs, so they had some income. My parents found one of the cousins a job at a bakery, but she didn't like the hours. I got the other one an interview at a grocery store that would have paid more, but she missed the phone interview. That's all to say, we were trying to get them jobs and doing our best to find jobs for people with limited English, while also trying to set them up for future success via English classes, applying for various public housing, and getting them some work experience. After 4 to 5 months, my parents approached my aunt and uncle about them starting to chip in for groceries and utilities, since the 2 cousins had been working for a couple of months at that point. My parents went from having 2 people and a cat to now having 6 people and a cat to house and feed. My dad went from getting groceries 1-2x a month to having to go every week. My parents aren't well off either. They live a frugal lifestyle, and my dad was fortunate to buy the apartment they live in a long time ago, or else we would have been priced out a long time ago. That was too much of an ask, so they said they would move out. Completely fine, since nobody was forcing them to stay and it wasn't doing my parents any favors. The whole time my relatives lived with my parents, my aunt and uncle constantly mentioned that they had other family and friends in other parts of the US that would help them out. Where these family and friends were when I spent hours helping with their immigration applications, fronting their immigration fees, buying them phones to use in the US, or even getting them winter clothes, I have no idea. So my dad said, "Fine, if that's what you want to do, then move out since you don't want to pay us anything and have all these other people that can help you." Pretty much a week after the conversation about chipping in, they had someone from my aunt's side of the family fly from Michigan and then drive them 13 plus hours from where we are to Michigan. Guess my relatives were correct in having other people that could help them. Before they moved, I suggested my uncle or my aunt and uncle go to Michigan first and see how it was before making such a big change. He refused. We even found places in NJ where the cost of living was lower, they could have jobs and still be close enough to all our family for visits, but they refused because they didn't trust the family friend who lived in that area who offered to help. The reason they didn't trust this family friend is because he dared to say that to find an apartment, he'd need them to put a deposit down for it. He wouldn't front it for them. Once they moved to Michigan, they quickly realized the help there was more limited than what they had here, and it's not quite as nice over there. My uncle kept talking about factory jobs he could do out in Michigan, and he got one. However, it's not quite as cushy as he was imagining, since they are basically out of the home from 5 in the morning to 4 to 5 p.m. And even decided she now works despite telling us no earlier. The area is not as nice and my cousins don't feel safe walking around. There is no good way for them to get around without a car, which they don't have. They are being nickeled and dimed for everything that their friends over there are helping them out with. Not quite the same situation they had while living with my parents. When my aunt and uncle have called me, it's all complaints about how tough the work is, how his blood pressure is high, how my aunt can't sleep with the stress, they want to move back closer, etc. Even one time said something along the lines of, "I'm of course not asking you to help, but we are having a tough time." The tone is one of expecting me to offer to help in some way. I have just said hopefully things will get better, because what else am I supposed to say? At this point, I rarely answer their calls because it will just be complaints and whining. My wife bought our daughter a horse the day after I had just lost my job, so I threatened to divorce her. Let me just start off by saying that I love my family and I would do anything to support them, but I have always struggled with anger issues and I've always had issues at work with a-hole bosses. I'm not very good at managing my rage when I get pissed off, and I have come close to getting fired previously when I didn't handle conflict well at my place of work. Luckily, I have managed to stay at my last job for almost 7 years, but we recently had gotten a new boss in our department, and he was a total dickhead. He was so condescending and didn't really understand anything about the department he was running, and eventually, I just lost my patience with him. He had gotten mad at me for missing a deadline for an important client and started berating me in front of the whole office. That's when I had enough and I got up and started yelling back to him in front of everyone. My boss doubled down, and we started screaming back and forth until I was eventually holding him by his collar and yelling at the top of my lungs. Now I understand that I lost my cool that day, but I had been managing my anger very well up until that point. If that man had never been hired by my company, this would have never happened. Unfortunately, I ended up being let go after that incident. I was extremely stressed out when I had to come home and tell my wife I had lost my job. My wife and I have been together for about 15 years, and it's not the first time she's seen me let go from a job because I flew off the handle on accident. We have a 16-year-old daughter together, and she is an excellent, well-behaved kid. She is on the lacrosse team at her school and a brilliant student who I am so proud of. About a year ago, one of her friends invited her to her barn, and she rode a horse for the first time and fell in love with it. She started volunteering at her friend's barn, and she and my wife started saving up to buy my daughter a horse. When I was still employed, I was supportive of their plan, and I always wanted to see my daughter happy. But as my daughter continued to talk about the barn and horse care, I started to realize that this was going to be an expensive endeavor. Before I lost my job, I knew we could handle the expenses of owning a horse since my daughter is our only child, and we have a lot of extra income after all of our bills are paid. My wife and daughter had finished putting the money together for the horse my daughter wanted around the same time I started having problems with my new boss. My wife and daughter had started looking at horses and falling in love with one in particular. They started arranging the sale with the horse's original owner and set up a date to bring her to a local barn where she would live under my daughter's care. I had never seen my daughter so happy and excited about anything, but I assumed that after I lost my job that my family would understand the new financial situation we would be in. I just thought that it would be clear as day that there was no way we could afford the horse after I had just lost my job. I assumed they knew that they would have to cancel the sale as soon as possible after I lost my job. Apparently, the sale was almost final, and the horse's travel arrangements were already in motion the week that I lost my job. But I still found it absolutely infuriating and ridiculous when I asked my wife if she had canceled the sale yet, and she said that they were still going through with it. I'll be honest when I say that I immediately started screaming at my wife, asking her how she could be such an idiot. I told her that my daughter was only a kid, so maybe she wasn't understanding, but my wife should have assumed that we wouldn't be able to take care of the horse after losing my income. My wife reminded me that the sale was already taking place before I had lost my job and that my daughter had a part-time job herself and would be contributing to the majority of the horse's expenses. My wife also insisted she could pick up an extra day at her own job if we really found ourselves struggling and that everything would be fine. I kept insisting to my wife that we didn't need this new burden over our heads and that she needed to find some way to get rid of this animal, because we could not afford it. My wife started to get very upset, and she said that she wouldn't take this away from our daughter just because I was a grown man who couldn't manage my emotions in any professional environment. This only made me more enraged, and I yelled at my wife for disrespecting me while I was already dealing with so much stress. I told her that if she ever spoke to me that way again, then I would leave her, and she would be responsible for destroying our entire family. My wife ended the conversation after this, and took my daughter out for dinner for a couple hours. When they got home, neither spoke to me, and my wife has been ignoring me since that day and sleeping on the couch. I have enough on my mind without her bullshit and I'm just going to wait until she comes to her senses and speaks to me again. I have already made a post on Craigslist selling the new horse, and I'm not budging when it comes to getting rid of it. I think most people would agree with me when I say that there's no way I should be expected to pay for this thing while I look for a new job. What happened to Notch, the guy who invented Minecraft? Before he started going by Notch, Marcus Persson was interested in video games, having worked on them since childhood. He created a game called Ruby Dung, which was never publicly released and is now entirely lost outside of a few screenshots. However, based on the code from Ruby Dung, Notch began working on another game, Minecraft, using many of Ruby Dung's backgrounds as items in the new game. He worked on Minecraft along with various other programmers after its initial release in 2009, and in late 2011, he formed the company Mojang to organize the development of Minecraft and stepped down as lead designer. Throughout this period, Notch was involved in, and famous among the Minecraft community. Beyond his role as the creator of Minecraft, he was also referenced in urban legends such as Herobrine. According to a series of extremely popular anonymous posts and videos, Notch's dead brother, Herobrine, haunted the world of Minecraft, and could be found by creating a world with empty as the seed. Although he wasn't involved in the creation of the Herobrine legend, Notch was famous enough among the Minecraft community to be written into it as the ghost's brother. In 2014, Mojang was sold to Microsoft for $2.5 billion, making Notch a billionaire, after which he stopped working on the game. Nevertheless, the game still included many references to Notch, such as messages mentioning him by name on the main menu. The drama begins with Gamergate. Gamergate was a large number of video game fans who decided they didn't like the presence of women, minorities and politics in their video games, and began harassing various people they considered SJWs online, especially developer Zoe Quinn. In June 2017, Notch went on Twitter and responded to a comment by Quinn about Gamergate saying what a effing idiot. He followed this up with a series of tweets about how he didn't support Gamergate necessarily, but they seemed cool enough. He also called himself strongly anti-SJW, and replied sure thing, feminist when someone argued with him. None of this went over well with his fans. This was followed by a tweet about how there should be a straight pride month. And anyone who disagreed should to be unalived, which was quickly followed by a half-hearted apology. Shortly afterwards, he tweeted out very prejudiced stuff heavily associated with hate groups. It's unclear if Notch knew this, but it wasn't a good look after everything else. Then came the end. In 2019, Microsoft removed all references to Notch in-game, and later that year, he was specifically not invited to the game's 10th anniversary celebration. Microsoft has since done their best to pretend he doesn't exist, outside of a mention of his name in the game's credits. In the Minecraft community, meanwhile, Notch is almost never mentioned outside of the context of his Twitter meltdowns. When other popular games are associated with a single developer, that developer will usually be pretty beloved in the game's fandom. Notch, though, never seems to come up, in spite of the incredible popularity of Minecraft. The widespread dislike for Notch also started an urban legend involving his $70 million house, that it includes an entire wall of candy, all of which rotted because no one ever visits him and none of it got eaten. Is it true? Well, Notch would like you to know that it definitely isn't, and he doesn't even eat candy. My best friend is getting married today and I truly think they are making a mistake. I've tried my best to be supportive, and gentle in my language if I must be honest, but I'm bursting with frustration. I know this is going to sound petty, and honestly I'm likely a bad friend for judging, but please hear me out. My friend is 23, marrying a man of the same age that they have been dating for about 8 months. At 5 months, they told me they were engaged, and that they were going to the courthouse on Halloween to get married. The only people invited are both of their mothers. A proper wedding ceremony will be held in the spring where everyone will be invited. I've already been told I'm one of groomsmen/maids of honor. The issue is besides the very short time they've been dating, my best friend is very quick to fall in love, and very quick to fall hard. Every person they have dated in the past 5 years has had the same things said about them, the best person they've ever dated, and I've never loved someone so much. I genuinely don't mind it normally, as they have lots of love to give and how much they see love as one of their charms. But it has led to them getting hurt very often, especially by terrible men who take advantage of their feelings, usually financially. I'm worried they are jumping into this relationship too fast. I've met the fiancé/husband, and I don't hate the guy. He's okay, and hasn't shown many red flags. He even makes my friend happy, so I should be happy. The only big red flag is his inability to hold a job, quitting or getting fired frequently, especially quitting without telling my friend. I have talked about my concerns about them rushing this, but they brushed them off and gave me the same. I've never loved anyone like this before. So I bit my tongue since and try to support them. I even went shopping with them to pick out the wedding outfit like a best friend should. I know I sound like a bad friend, and I genuinely feel bad for being so apprehensive. I do also want to get ahead of any jealousy claims. I am gay, and even though I always pictured me and my friend ending up together, I still want what's best for him. My best friend got so mad at me when I showed up to his wedding, so I accidentally destroyed their $400 cake. My best friend from childhood is getting married in our hometown this month, and I showed up to surprise him. I got an invitation to come but I had to RSVP no. Last minute change of plans and I was able to make it. I thought he would be so excited to see me because we haven't seen each other in years. I even made a whole plan with some of our other friends to surprise him at the wedding. I gave the flower girl $100 and I took her place in the wedding procession. So when my buddy the groom looks up the aisle instead of the flower girl, he sees me throwing flowers around. It was such a funny and cute concept and something we could have looked back and laughed about, but he was just stunned and did not crack a smile at all. Whatever, It was a funny little thing and I figured not that big of a deal. I definitely didn't expect him to blow up on me the way he did. At the reception he made a beeline for me and was so furious that I had shown up without telling him. Apparently it cost them about $200 per person and didn't want to have to pay for me when I RSVP'd no. I told him whatever, I didn't need any food or drinks or anything like that and just wanted to be there for my friend. He wasn't happy to see me at all even though we haven't seen each other in years. He just said whatever, just don't eat anything, don't touch anything and don't cause any more problems. Like what I did had been a catastrophe rather than just a little joke. I thought fine, female this guy, if he doesn't want to see me at his wedding then we're obviously not friends. Well, remember that little flower girl from earlier? Her and a few of the other kids at the wedding were playing around and I had this brilliant idea. I told them the cake was actually for the kids only. That wedding tradition was for the little kids to eat the whole wedding cake with their hands. I guess little kids will always listen to what grown-ups say because they did not ask twice, they just dug into it. They even got so excited that they knocked part of it over. And I had heard the wedding planner say how much it was too. Apparently they spent $400 on it because it was a 3-tiered cake with real flowers on it. What a waste of money. When the groom came over almost half the cake was gone and he screamed at the little kids to get the female out of there. Not a good look for sure. They even tried to serve the cake. They just cut around where the kids had eaten it and were giving everybody these pathetic little slices. Before anyone else could give me a stupid lecture I just rode out of there laughing my butt off. Autistic people of Reddit, how did you find the courage to express love? I had a real connection with my college roommate, who was severely autistic. When we first met during freshman year, I didn't know about their condition. But we quickly became close as F and spent all our free time together, going to parties and hanging out with our friends. As the year went on, I realized that my feelings for them were more than just friendship. By springtime, we were basically joined at the hip, always chilling in our dorm rooms or taking walks around campus. We were best buds, but there was also a romantic spark between us that neither of us had addressed yet. After graduation, we both moved back home for a few months while searching for jobs. During one of my visits home, my family noticed how close we were and asked if I thought there might be something more than friendship between us, which made me realize that not only did I have feelings for them but they probably felt the same way about me too. So on my next visit, instead of being shy and keeping it to myself, I mustered up some courage to express how much they meant to me and asked if they'd like to go on a date with me. It took a few tries before I finally found the words to say what was in my heart, but eventually one night as we said goodnight I managed to tell them how much they meant to me and ask if they want to go out with me. Thankfully they said yes. A couple weeks later we went on our first official date, dinner at an Italian restaurant followed by Guardians of the Galaxy 3D, we both love space movies. That was almost 2 years ago now and last month they proposed. We're so thankful for this connection between us and can't wait to spend forever together.
I feel like I'm in a movie and I need advice. I need advice from the readers and listeners because this truly feels like a scene for a film of sorts, and I can't ask anyone with an objective opinion. I'm 22 and have been dating my now ex-best friend's boyfriend, Jake, for about 9 months. I have always been a romantic and dreamed of having your type of love, but I realize it's unrealistic. I literally met Jake at a bar while his band was playing. Our eyes met when he performed, and he came up after his set and introduced himself. He was sweet, and we had sarcastic banter almost immediately. The fact that he played guitar was a nice touch. I had a turbulent home life growing up. My mother got pregnant young and was basically forced to marry my abusive, narcissistic drug addict father when she was younger than me. When stuff started quieting down, and she had a stable enough job, she got primary custody, and this is the job where she met Meg. Meg and my mom worked in the same class and grew very close. Meg and her husband had 2 kids, one around my age 5 and one 2 years younger. My mom and Meg found out they were running the same half marathon and decided to train together and that we kids would play at the park to keep us busy. We hit it off like firecrackers. For the next 12-ish years, we would have dinner at least twice a week, and I was over there a lot more since I didn't have any siblings. I used to beg my mom for a sibling because, until grade 3, I was the only kid in my class who didn't have a sibling. The boy my age, Zach, and the girl who was 2 years younger, Alice, were and still are my siblings. I love them both so dearly, but only in a sibling way. When I was 16, I did gain a little crush on Zach, but I realized when I grew up that I just wanted a teen movie romance and I didn't actually want Zach. I knew this for sure when we were 19. And he came over when my friends and I were pre-gaming for a night out. 19 is the legal age to drink in my country. Chill, he talked with us, and it ended up with the weirdest thing we've done in bed, not quite sure how we got there, but we did, and Zach said he didn't do anything that wasn't really vanilla, which is fine, but the only time I had vanilla intimacy was when I lost my virginity. I just don't get the same pleasure or any at all. I knew we would never be a thing, and honestly, I didn't feel any different. Zach started dating Nancy last year, and honestly, she's super awesome. They're long distance because she lives halfway around the world. She's a family friend from Meg's side of the family, so they've known each other longer than I've known them. When I went to England, Zach had us meet up, and we hit it off. We went dancing and sightseeing, which was probably really boring for her, and she even gave me a lift to the airport cause going on the tube with suitcases is a big no, she said, and when my plane got delayed she came and picked me up, and we decided I should stay another week since she would house me and she had an extra ticket for a theme club night. Nancy was the 3rd person I told that I would work at my city's fashion week, and we are really close. She knows about Jake and how I thought I was serious about him and couldn't wait to meet him at Zach's, Alice's, and my joint birthday party. We all have birthdays within 5 days of each other, so we combined them for family stuff to make it easier. I invited Jake because he knew most people there, but I wasn't entirely sure because he had issues with Zach. Jake and Zach had met previously when Zach and I went out for lunch one day because our colleges were 2 blocks from each other. Jake surprised me that day with lunch, so I brought him along to meet Zach. I thought they hit it off okay, but Jake told me later he wasn't sure how comfortable he was with Zach and me being so close. I brushed him off and said he had nothing to worry about, that he was my brother, and that I respected his girlfriend too much. He said that Zach wasn't my actual brother, though, and that he wanted me to take some time away from hanging out at their house so much. I said they were my family, and it wouldn't be me just not seeing Zach. It would mean I wouldn't see Alice, Meg, or Meg's husband, who is practically like my substitute dad. I put my foot down and said if it meant choosing, then I decided on them because we had only been dating for 3 months. We reconciled, but I still didn't know if I wanted him around my family cause whenever I mentioned Zach, he would start singing Sweet Home Alabama. It led to a big fight where I did admit to having a crush at 16, which he then proceeded to call me a effing liar even though I said I haven't been attracted to him in years, and he asked how does he know that if we ever broke up that I wouldn't just go sleep with him, and I said the truth. I knew we weren't sexually compatible because he wouldn't do kinky stuff in bed and I can't have a relationship with no intimacy. The fight lasted a little longer, but it ended, and we made up. The only reason he got an invite was because Nancy wanted to meet him, and I thought seeing Zach and Nancy in love would finally convince him that nothing would happen. The dinner is going great. Nancy, Alice, and I were talking in our usual corner of the couch. Jake was sitting to my right, and we were cuddling, and everyone was in the living room. We talked about the latest season of Grey's Anatomy when Nancy said that she hadn't found it interesting since Alex left and always had a big crush on him. Jake decided to open his big mouth and say, "Oh, like Op has a crush on Zach." Silence. My head swiveled faster than light almost, and I stood up and began dragging him out of the house. He then said before we could leave the living room, "Oh wait, you don't like him because he won't choke you out in bed." I stopped, and I could feel myself immediately crying. Alice and my stepdad dragged him out of the house while he was screaming for me, and I locked myself in the bathroom. I sent a quick text to Zach saying that it was a stupid teenage crush and I hadn't liked him for years and tried to figure out what I should send Nancy. When she knocked on the door, I stared at my phone for 20 minutes, trying to think of a way to salvage our friendship. She came to comfort me. She said she took my word instead of someone she knew for half an hour and hugged me while I blathered on about how much I love her, and it wasn't true. I left soon after, and I haven't spoken to Zach, Meg, or her husband since the incident, and I don't know how to go about it. I'm terrified I've lost them forever. I know Zach has texted me, but I haven't looked at them. I know I'll probably see him when he drops Nancy off at the airport because I want to see her off too, but I don't think I can ever look him in the eye again. I miss my brother and my family. My spineless fiancé postponed our wedding 4 times because of his manipulative mother. Now, he's bawling after I called off our engagement and kicked him out. I've been with my fiancé for 7 years and we have been engaged for 3 years. We have gone ahead and tried to do a save the date 4 times now, and every single time, his mom convinces him to postpone. It's always well, don't you think you have bigger things to worry about? Whether it be our living situation, we are renting and she thinks we should buy first because we aren't stable, or our money situation but we have plenty of money, as my husband is an RN and I'm a lawyer. It's just always something. We planned for a family gathering in my mom's backyard. She has 3 acres and a beautiful pond and it's just perfect. And we are doing a potluck, so it will be a very low-cost wedding. Plus, everyone we know lives within an hour of the location, so only giving a month or 2 notice is perfectly acceptable in our case. With all this said, his mom has 0 reason to try and sway us against it, but her newest argument is that we need to wait until our daughter is at least 3 so she can be our flower girl. She's 7 months old. Well, in December my husband and I talked and we decided we wanted to get married in August. I told him don't let your mom dictate it and he said he wouldn't and that he was tired of listening to her. But last weekend my mother and his mother both came for dinner and I was talking to my mom about what dress I wanted her to wear as the matron of honor. My husband's mom asked when we planned to tell her we had decided on a date and my husband said when we told everyone else. She just said oh and got quiet and took leave maybe 20 minutes later. He had already made plans to go over to her house after dinner to help her with her cable box, so he left shortly after that to head over to her place while I drank some wine with my mom. When he got back he was super quiet but said he was just tired and went to bed. But last night he said, at random, my mom kind of has a point. Maybe we should wait until we buy a house so our living situation is a bit more stable. She's not wrong in saying that it should be something we are worried about. I just went silent and didn't comment because I was pissed off. But he kept making comments, like it'll only be a couple of years, 5 at most. I just took my ring off and handed it to him and said I was no longer interested. He immediately started protesting and trying to put the ring back on my finger and I wouldn't let him. I said I was no longer interested in marrying him and that maybe he should move back home with mommy because I knew for a fact that that woman would make up another excuse the second we bought a house, and I was really just so turned off at the thought of marrying him at this point because I have 0 business being with a man who has no backbone and who would put our lives on hold in favor of a woman who still wants to scrub his back in the shower. She has not said she wants to scrub his back in the shower, but she often talks about how she had to help him shower for months when he was 16 because he broke his leg, and as the story goes, he told her he didn't want help and she forced it. And it's even weirder that she still talks about it like it was a fond memory to see her 16-year-old naked. He's crying at this point and I'm stupid calm, maybe because I'm over it, and told him I wanted him to leave or I could leave, but those were the only options. He ended up leaving, sobbing the entire time. I do feel bad, I feel gutted. He means everything to me, but I can't do this anymore. His mom has been blowing up my phone with texts, trying to plead her case, and I just texted back and said no, it's fine, you won, now you can have your baby boy back full time, and blocked her number. My friends think I'm wildly overreacting.
I've been flying for almost 30 hours and the flight attendants won't stop crying. 30 hours ago I hopped on a late-night flight from New York heading to Los Angeles. After boarding I saw that I had an entire row to myself. Takeoff passed without incident, and soon I was stretched out for a nap across the row. I slept for a few hours, I don't know how long, but I woke up to some severe turbulence. It's possible that the lights in the cabin went out for a moment, but I was so disoriented that it's hard to say. I checked my phone to see that it was 4:03 a.m., which I figured gave me about an hour until we landed. When I looked out my window, I was shocked to see nothing but wide open ocean. My jaw dropped. There's obviously no ocean between New York and Los Angeles. I hit the button to call the flight attendant and spent the next few minutes racking my brain for a lake that could have possibly been big enough to explain what I was seeing. I jumped when the attendant flipped off the light. She was grinning from ear to ear, and tears were pouring down her cheeks. "How can I help you, sir?" she asked. I froze for a moment at her reaction before deciding to just ask my question. "Where are we? Why does it look like we're flying over an ocean?" She wiped her cheeks to clear the tears, still grinning wildly. "Sir, we'll be landing in about an hour." Okay, thank you," I said. After she left I checked the clock on my phone again. 4:03 a.m. blinked back at me. It hadn't changed. I had to have been waiting with my call light on for at least 5 minutes. How was it possible that it hadn't changed at all? I opened up my laptop and saw it too displayed 4:03 a.m. I pulled out my phone, started a stopwatch in the app, and spent the next 2 hours looking back and forth between the clocks, waiting for them to change. They never did. I tapped the shoulder of an older woman sitting in the row ahead of me. She looked back, an annoyed expression across her face. "Yes?" she asked. "Do you know how long until we land?" I asked. She narrowed her eyes. "That flight attendant said it would be about another hour." I shook my head in confusion. "That flight attendant? We talked almost 2 hours ago. We should have landed already." She stared at me as if I was crazy. I was going to continue trying to convince her, but I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun to see a male flight attendant grinning down at me, tears pinging off his cheeks onto my shoulder. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to calm down, or I'll be calling the captain." I told him that wouldn't be necessary and sat back. He removed his hand and stepped away. The flight attendants continued to stop by every few hours offering meals. My stopwatch continued to tick up and is now telling me that I've been on this plane for more than 30 hours. I've explored all of coach and tried talking to some of the other passengers, but they've all told me that they're expecting to land in an hour or so. Around 3 hours ago I tried getting into first class. I made it past the curtain but was escorted back by 2 grinning flight attendants. Their grip on my arms were like iron. "Sir, the seatbelt sign is on," one said. "Please remain in your seat with your buckle fastened. We'll be landing in about an hour." I'd just about given up hope when a woman came down the aisle dressed in a business suit. She didn't look at me or slow down, but she dropped a piece of paper onto my tray as she made her way to the bathrooms at the back of the plane. I shot a look around before unrolling it. It said, "Are you stuck too?" I pulled out a pen and wrote yes. "It's been 30 hours. I folded the scrap of paper up and set it on the tray closest to the aisle. She left the bathroom and picked it up as she passed. It's been 20 minutes since then. I don't know why, but I don't think the flight attendants would like it if they knew we were talking. It doesn't matter. I have to do something. I'll update you all with whatever happens next." Comment for part 2. I am obsessed with my cousin. We're both guys. He's 15 and I'm 18. We are very close and his parents divorced 7 years ago and he and his mother have been living with us since then. I've always been a bit protective of him. His dad was a piece of crap and after they moved in with us he'd sleep in my bed almost every night because he had a nightmare. We chose to share a room even though there was more than enough space at our house for him to have his own. I developed a crush on him in that time, but it was wrong so I kept it to myself. Last Wednesday we wanted to go to the cinema together. When I got there he was talking on his phone and smiling. That was a little strange because he doesn't have any friends outside me and my friend group and he wouldn't call any of them. When he saw me approaching, he hung up and acted like nothing happened. During the movie he kept getting texts and I tried to see who they were from. When I asked him who it was that had been texting him he said it was only app notifications. That evening, while he was taking a shower, I went into his room to listen to him in the shower for my own enjoyment when I saw his phone lying around. I got curious so I checked his messages. I found out that they are from a guy who goes to our school. They had been texting for over a month. They were sending each other heart emojis. When I found out I was angry. I felt betrayed. How could he choose him over me? I have to admit however, I'm not too surprised that he's gay because he does look and act a bit more feminine. I tried to move past this newfound knowledge but every time I think about it I just get angry and jealous that he'd rather spend time with someone who's basically a stranger than me who's always been there for him and is down for whatever he could get from this other guy and more. I know the guy he's dating. I didn't like him before and I like him even less now. I don't think their relationship will last and I don't want to see my cousin get hurt. I want to tell my aunt because I know she loves her son as much as I do and wants to protect him from getting hurt again. But if I did that I'd automatically be outing my cousin to our family and that would hurt him as well. What's the naughtiest that's happened to you at Bible camp? This is naughty and terrible. I still feel horrible about it, and a little grateful that I had the chance to go so far under God's watchful eye, I guess. I was 15 and in Bible camp. In my group, there was a girl who was in a wheelchair. She was actually really hot, and while the rest of us were playing sports, she usually left her chair right at the edge of the sports field. I got tired at one point and noticed her, so I walked over and asked her if she was okay. She said yeah, but she was a bit bored because she couldn't play. That's fair, I thought. My good deed of the day, I decided, was going to be to hang out with this girl instead of my other friends. I found a tennis ball and we tossed it back and forth for a while. Afterwards, we exchanged numbers, and she said she'd like to do this again. Cool. Later that day, she texted me from her lodgings and she wanted to meet up. Since guys and girls are in different lodgings, I went to hers and wheeled her over. She spent a while making me walk and finally picked a really nice patch of the grass for the two of us to sit on. What ensued could only be described as a very romantic date. Naturally, being teenagers, things got hot and heavy. She ended up on a small blanket we'd laid out so we wouldn't get dirty, and clothes started coming off really quickly. It got very steamy. Then, the worst happened. I heard the voices of the camp leaders. Unable to think about anything else, I said, "Crap, run," and bolted out of there like a track star. Only afterwards did I realize she was laying there almost completely naked when the Bible leaders came around. My awful parents grounded me for not being around a family gathering. So, I told them good luck with that and moved out. I live at home while going to university. I'm in my final year and I have a job lined up after I graduate. My parents have been charging me rent since I was 16. I have a small company that makes me about $60,000 a year. I started it in high school. It is one of the reasons I graduated early from high school and why I got attention from recruiters. My parents said that since I was earning adult money I could take in adult responsibilities. I thought that was fair. So I paid for all my stuff starting at age 16. Not university because I got a scholarship. And the rent they charged me was a minor for $300 a month. But I basically considered my room to be completely mine after that. I kept it tidy because I like it that way. But they had no say in when I cleaned it. When I did my laundry, other than to not do it at a time when I would disturb the family, for example 3 a.m., I bought food for myself and I ate when I wanted. They tried to say I was separating myself from the family, but I saw it more as having my own schedule. This year for spring break I went down to Mexico with friends. My parents were upset because they were hosting a big Easter family get-together. When I got back they said I was behaving badly by not being around for a family gathering. I said it was my last spring break at university and that I was not responsible for their schedule. They said I was grounded and I laughed and said good luck with that. I went to my room and locked the door. They tried banging on it for my attention but I'm done. My grandfather came over to talk to me later. He is the one who helped me get my company started and he is always there for me. He said that I was rude to my parents when they were trying to be there for me. I asked him how much rent he charged my mom when she lived at home. He said it was ridiculous to think he would charge his kids rent. I told him that I had been paying rent for 4 years. He went into the house and I heard a fight. When he came out he said that I need to treat my parents with more respect but that since they are my landlords they do not have a say over how I spend my time. I'm avoiding my parents for now and I'm renting on Airbnb right now until I graduate. I took everything that was important to me and I've left $600 for the last 2 months I had planned on being there. They keep calling me but I am currently getting ready to move for my new job. I don't have the energy to deal with them. My wife and our therapist say I am an emotional abuser. This all possibly stems from a traumatic event my wife experienced. Me, my brother, and my wife, then girlfriend, were in rural Thailand, and her back was hurt from being on a motorcycle for too long. We stayed in a hotel and she believed my brother and I were going to abandon her there. She overheard us talking about how to get her to a hospital and misunderstood. Since then, she doesn't like to be around my brother. When we got married, I promised her that she'd never have to see him again. Later, she amended that to be that our children will never see him either. I have a problem with that. I am very close to my brother. He is my identical twin. Often when I bring up the issue, she gets very upset. For example, we were driving and I mentioned the possibility of moving into the same neighborhood as him so our children can grow up with her cousins. She got so upset that she started screaming, sped up the car to dangerous speeds and started shaking the steering wheel, almost fishtailing. We were on a windy stretch of highway with a cliff on one side. I kept yelling at her to stop the car and pull over, but she wouldn't. The end result of all this is that for a long time, with some recent exceptions, we didn't see my brother's family and I would avoid mentioning him. And when I talked on the phone to him, I would do it out of earshot of her. She has many other complaints about him, but they are mostly irrational. She says he's an emotional abuser. She also says I'm an emotional abuser. And her brother, sister, father, and aunt are also abusers. I haven't really met them, so I don't know. We saw a couples therapist, and the therapist agreed that I am an abuser. My wife would exaggerate things, make some things up, and say that I was lying. The therapist believed her. After several brutal sessions, I couldn't take it and stopped going. I had a personal therapist that I saw a few times. He became our couples therapist. The same thing happened with him. He believed her story, didn't believe mine, and said that I was an abuser. He had me go to a battery group for 3 hours a week, plus 2 hours driving. He had me read a book about abuse with instructions to not consider my wife as an abuser when reading it. The book said that women can't be abusers. He instructed me to have specific thoughts every time I thought badly of my wife. Almost every waking hour of my life was spent thinking about abuse. I couldn't concentrate on anything else. They had me convinced that I was an abuser after all, and my wife says. So I think part of what convinced me was it was a way to repair our marriage. If I'm an abuser, that's something I can fix. I told my boyfriend he's a lazy idiot and I won't submit to him. This has led to a lot of discord amongst both of our families and them telling me to suck it up and be the woman he needs me to be. Right now, I'm staying with my sister while we figure things out. This all began the other day when my boyfriend and I got into an argument over split chores in the house. I had gotten home from work and came back to a dirty home. There were water bottles and trash on the floor, along with milk still being out for however long, and dirty dishes in the sink. To say the house was a mess would be an understatement. It was my boyfriend's day off today, but I had to work so he was home alone. I work in the ER and often have to do 12 to 16-hour shifts. He works in a warehouse and has a 40-hour work week, which I understand can be some back-breaking work, which is why I do what I do for him in the first place. Still, I manage to cook, clean, and pack food for both him and I, all while he does the bare minimum like taking out the trash or making sure he doesn't leave toothpaste on the bathroom sink. On this particular day, I had a rough day at work and was hoping to come home to a clean house, shower, and get some rest. It was my Friday, and I was finally getting paid. I just wanted to relax. But unfortunately, when I came back home, the house was a mess and he had guests a few hours prior, without my knowledge. I found him in the room bundled up like a sleeping peaceful baby. I was furious. I didn't even say anything to him. I simply showered and slept in our guest bedroom. I was awoken a few hours later by him yelling at me saying how lazy I was for just coming home and going to sleep. I yelled at him back saying if you wanted the house to be clean, you should have gotten your lazy butt up and cleaned up your own mess, yourself. I am not your maid, nor am I your mother. He yelled at me back saying that it was my duty as the woman of the house to keep it clean and that he wished I was like his mom because she did her job. When he said that, a flip in my head just switched. I argued back saying that if he wanted me to be like his mom, that he should be like his dad and be a better provider, and I quit my job. He said that he was the man of the house and whatever he says, goes. I don't remember entirely what I told him but said something along the lines of no, you aren't the man of the house. I am. I go to work, pay most of the bills, clean the house, cook almost every meal you eat, all while being pregnant. You can't even comprehend how exhausted I am. I am tired of your lazy butt doing nothing but come home from work, eat, and sleep. You don't help me with crap. A man is supposed to lead, but I always have to take initiative in this relationship and I'm tired of it. We're not even married and you're expecting me to step into the wifely role while you act like a kid, he said. See, this is why I haven't asked you to marry me. My heart dropped into my stomach. I told him that if he was never planning to marry me anyways, that we should go our separate ways and for him to stop wasting my time. I packed up and left, deactivated the tracking system I have in my car and phone, and has since blocked him. I am so hurt. I have invested so much of my time, money, and life into this man, and I receive nothing in return. As much as I want a baby, I don't want one that bad. I was set on leaving him until his mom called me last night and said I was stepping out of line as his woman and that I should have just cleaned up and that it wasn't that hard for me to do. This all could have been avoided if I decided to be the bigger person and clean up after him. That it is God's word that I, as a woman, should submit to her man. I am now second-guessing my decision in terminating my pregnancy and ending my relationship over something so small like cleaning. But I know that no matter what, it won't be enough for him and that I most likely will not get the ring I deserve. I know that there is someone out there who wants to give me the world, not this little ghetto corner of California that he has to offer me, but I do love him. Growing up without either parent in my life, if I decided to keep my baby, I want my child to have both parents in their life. I cut off my mother because she allowed the guy who roped me to visit my daughter. 10 years later she wants to fix our relationship and get to know her grandkids. 13 years ago I was roped by my boyfriend's best friend Jay when I was 16. My mother never liked my boyfriend ever since we started dating back when we were 13, and certainly hated him when we got married. She always wanted me to be with Jay because Jay came from a good family, meaning Christian and white. So when Jay roped me, she didn't believe me despite all the evidence that he did. So while I was waiting for trial I moved in with my boyfriend and his parents. During this time I found out I was pregnant. I knew it wasn't my boyfriend's because we were never intimate and I still had my V card. Jay ended up taking a plea deal and got no jail time in exchange for him never having any right to see my daughter. When my daughter was born my mother asked me to move back home and said sorry for everything. A year after my daughter was born I went to college a few hours away and my mom retired early to watch her. During the week I stayed on campus so I didn't have to drive back and forth. On the weekends I came home and I also called every night to make sure my daughter was okay. My second year of college, me and my boyfriend eloped and my mom did not like that one bit even though we've been together for 6 years at that point and he takes care of my daughter like she's his and still does to this day. So one day we had a big snowstorm and my Thursday and Friday classes were canceled. So I went home early without telling my mom and in the kitchen when I walked in, Jay's mom, my mom and Jay were also holding my daughter when I walked in. They were surprised to say the least and I started flipping out naturally and grabbed my daughter and packed a bag with her stuff. My mother and Jay's mother were pleading with me to not leave while I was packing. When I went to leave my mom was crying, now begging me to forgive her. I said I would never forgive her and went to walk out. On my way out Jay grabbed my arm and said I should be nicer to my mother. My mother called me hundreds of times but I never answered her. I left to get an apartment with my husband and daughter. I got a babysitter for when I was in class. A week after this incident my mother put over $100K in my bank account to buy me over. My younger sister just got married and my mother was at the wedding and I had to be civil to her. She asked about my daughter and son and current pregnancy. She told me how she wanted to fix things with me and see her grandkids before she eventually dies and how she's always believed me about the rope. She just didn't want to be fired, as Jay's mom was her boss. I asked her if she still hangs out with Jay's mother. She said sometimes but mostly at church. I left the conversation at that. She's my mother. I love her. I miss her. She raised me and my sister all by herself but I don't know if I will ever be able to completely forgive her. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet.
My dad sold my soul to the devil. My dad is what they call a macho man. All he wanted was sons. He lived and breathed for another Keller boy. Naturally, when my older brother was born, he was overjoyed. 3 years later, he begged my mom to have another son. When he found out we were twins, he was excited to have 3 sons. So when my brother and I came out, and he saw that I was a girl, he was despaired. I've always been his least favorite kid, and he never tried to hide it. While he named my brothers Anthony and David, which mean priceless and beloved respectfully, he named me Lilith, which literally means night monster. While my brothers and mom tried to soften that direct punch to the gut by calling me Lily, he insisted on us all calling me Lilith, so I could feel the disappointment that he felt the day I was born. Clearly him and my mom did not stay married, and quite unfortunately he signed for full custody when Anthony was 5, and David and I too. Things just got worse from there. If he took Anthony and David out to eat or to see a movie, I was to stay home. He spent all his time playing sports with my brothers, and wouldn't let me join even though I, as a girl, actually showed a genuine interest in what he was doing with my brothers. When I was 4, Dad got cancer. And from what I heard, it was supposed to be terminal. That's where the title of this story comes into play. Yup, he made a deal with Satan. 15 more years of life if he sold one of his children's souls. And big surprise, he chose me. So once I die, it's off to hell, no matter how little I sin or how much I pray. The first time I remember something happening to me was about a month after my dad made that deal. I was in my tiny, cramped room, trying to sleep on a bed I outgrew years ago, while my brothers and dad watched a movie downstairs, when I saw it. This thing in my closet. It was pale, with gaunt, sunken eyes and a gaping mouth. Its long and bony fingers wrapped around my closet door. There was no question that this thing was a demon. I immediately cried for my dad, who stormed up the stairs and gave me a proper beating for interrupting his movie night with his kids. After that, he called me a little girl for crying and locked me in my room. As I cried all that night, the demon simply watched me from the closet, unmoving. Demons watching me were pretty normal from then on. Sometimes it would be the pale gaunt thing in my closet, other times a dark figure hovering over my bed. And on bad nights, a horned figure with glowing red eyes would stare at me, taunting me through the window. After a while, I stopped being scared of them. One night when I was 9, the gaunt creature was back in my closet, staring at me while I read. He began to make this really weird growling noise, to which I shushed him. He then did something he never did before. While he would occasionally wrap his hand around my slightly ajar door, he never actually came out of my closet. Until that night. In one swift movement, he tore open my closet door and stood up fully, revealing he was taller than the ceiling itself. He bent his neck in an abnormal way to fit under the roof. I rightfully should have been shitting my pants at this moment, but for some reason, I just wasn't that scared. We locked eyes for a while, which was more awkward than scary, so I just went back to reading my book. He just looked at me curiously for a while, until my dad decided he wanted to be a horrible person again, and threw open my door to yell at me for something or other. The entire time the demon just watched. Thankfully my dad left after slapping me across the face, but I was crying again for the rest of the night. The demon, who now looked at me with something more than curiosity, looked back at my closed door, trying to see my dad. As I did nothing but sob, the demon just sat down beside my bed, towering over me. Neither of us looked at each other the rest of the night. I cried while he just stared off in the distance, but I wasn't alone, and that was all I cared about. From then on things changed. I wasn't just not scared of the demons, I welcomed them. Especially the gaunt-looking one who sat by me that night. He would sit with me whenever my dad was bad to me, or whenever I had boy troubles at school. He never talked at me, and barely ever looked at me, but all I cared about was that he was there for me. I even gave him a name. Papa. I remember this one night, I was 14, and upset because Jacob, the boy I liked, didn't invite me to the Valentine's dance at our school. On top of that, my dad had gotten into one of his moods, and had thrown a chair at me. When I ran into my room, I was almost relieved to see Papa crouched by the closet. Papa, I cried, running to him. It was stupid, I know, I was calling a literal demon Papa, but I had nobody else. He was the only one who had ever shown me any sympathy. At first he stepped back, but as I cried even harder, he looked at me in the eyes. Maybe for the first time since that night he stepped out of the closet. Then he did something surprising. He hugged me back. As I felt his icy cold hands wrap around me, I should have been terrified, but I was filled with love. Love, for finally finding a dad who loved me. But one night, as I was reading To Kill a Mockingbird for my school project, I made a mistake. Papa looked curious, so I decided to read out loud to him. I guess I made too much noise though, because David opened my door. Lilith, who the hell are you? What the fuck is that? He screamed, and my dad came rushing up. Papa couldn't hide in time, and now Anthony, David, and my dad all stared him down. He stood up, revealing his giant stature, and David began to cry, while Anthony froze in place and my dad ran off to get a vial of holy water he had kept by his bed ever since the deal was made. As I tried to run away with Papa, he stopped me and shook his head. We both knew it was too late. I cried as I hugged him goodbye, and as my dad approached us with the holy water and sprayed it on Papa, he let out a blood-curdling screech that could have been heard across the country. I watched in horror as Papa, who had stayed by my side all these years, faded to nothingness. There, Dad said. It can't hurt us anymore, sons, he said, embracing David and Anthony in a hug. I just laid over Papa's lifeless body, uncontrollably sobbing. We were all so caught up in our own worlds we didn't notice something come up behind us. He was large, even bigger than Papa, and had 2 large horns, a goat's head, and a large stick in his hand. Dad turned around slowly, looking to this thing as he glared down at my abuser. Your Majesty, we had a deal, Stanley. I granted you 15 more years of life, on 2 conditions. 2. It boomed, and I noticed David had wet himself. It was a misunderstanding, sir, my daughter. You were granted 15 more years of life, on the conditions that I get your daughter upon her death, and you never harm anyone, ever again. Do you understand? It asked. Yes, and I haven't. Promise, the creature laughed. First you break a promise, and now you lie? To His Satanic Majesty himself? Seeing you have not only harmed your daughter her entire life, but have killed one of my best minions, you have broken my trust. I'm breaking off the deal. My dad got down on his knees. No, please, I'll do anything. He begged. Satan looked at me. There is one way. If Lilith, your daughter and the one you cursed, forgives you, I will set you free, and you will live the rest of your life. My dad slowly turned to me, and put on a smile. Hey, Lily, what about it? Look at me, I'm your dad. Your Papa. I raised you. Don't you love me? I'm your dad, for fuck's sake, he said, getting more agitated as I stared at him. It's up to you, Lilith. Satan said. I looked at Papa's body on the floor, then back to my dad. Come on, you gonna believe Satan, or your dear old dad? My dad said, pleading to me. I glared at him. My dad is dead, bitch. You killed him, I said. I don't forgive you. And with that, Satan dragged my dad down to the netherworld, my brothers and I hearing his screams until it was far away enough that it faded away, to where he could never hurt me again. As my brothers cried in the loss of their dad, I walked back to Papa on the ground and kissed his forehead. Goodbye, Papa. Thank you.
People who came into a lot of money. What was your horror story of people begging for money? My money came in the form of accidental death inheritance after my dad died in a motorcycle crash. His girlfriend at the time was furious that he left everything to me. She tried to convince me to give her money, and when I refused she took everything. And I mean everything from his house overnight. She rented 2 U-Hauls and her brother raided the place. Furniture, household supplies, food, clothes, everything was gone. By the time I got there, their only things left were a few t-shirts she left on the floor and a couple empty cans of soda on the kitchen counter. She even took things that held no monetary value, like a calendar I made my dad for Father's Day one year. It was just colorful cardboard and pictures of us I had glued together. She took it all. She started selling what she could on Facebook, mostly his woodworking tools and fishing gear, and she fled to somewhere in the next state over. We tried to get help from the police, but they didn't do much. She did a lot of other things that were bigger legal issues, I guess. For instance, she ran a fake GoFund claiming the funds were going to his funeral and managed to get over 10 grand from his coworkers, but I'm the one who paid for the services. Last I heard, they finally found her in some woodsy town, but I don't know what happened. It's honestly too emotional to deal with, and I've accepted the fact that she most likely destroyed or sold everything already anyway. It's been 2 years since this all happened. It's horribly sad, though. What is your worst stiffy situation that escalated beyond belief? It was Spanish class in 8th grade, and the teacher was making us go up to do our presentations. Somehow, a random boner appeared. Cool. I'll just flex my muscles and get rid of it. I figured I wouldn't be presenting for a while anyway. 10 minutes later, the rager is still there, stronger than ever. More time passes and then it's my turn. I sort of just sit there, still, as the teacher repeatedly calls my name. I can't get up, and there is no time for a tucking maneuver with girls sitting on my left and right. So I continue to sit still and she starts getting mad, upset that I refuse to present. She then threatens to call the school cop. I stay silent. I'm not even scared anymore, I can just sit here till it goes. She calls the main office and the whole class is loving that I am refusing to move a muscle. The school cop comes into the room and asks me to stand up. Now I have no other choice, so I stand slowly with my hand covering my wood. What's that you're covering? The officer, his tone curious and suspicious. Nothing, I said, unsure how to explain this predicament. What is it, he said, more aggressively this time. I stood there still, silent, too embarrassed to reveal the truth. The officer shouted, afraid of my silence. Everyone exit, now. He lunged at my hands and pulled them behind my back, took me to the floor, and threw me in cuffs. What are some things that people who live in places with brutally cold temperatures know, that the rest of us don't? I lived in a remote Siberian town throughout their winter and the temperatures remained below 20 C for most of the winter, and on very very cold days, it would go below 40 C as well. Layers upon layers. If you can put in a thin shirt underneath your fur coats, you put it in. There are no veggies to eat. There are no fruits. Those who can afford them are usually the oligarchs who come to visit their mansions for fun. Canada might have, because it has world's largest food producer just next to it. Fatty meats, milks, fats, milk, and some roots and tubers. Some people also preserve and pickle all kinds of veggies during the summer. Your lungs burn. The air is so dry, every breath you breathe out will push water out of your body. The lungs can become dry, and then every breath burns. You might want to replenish the fluids in your body, even when you're inside. Light alcohol helps, of course, then the legendary vodka. But once the alcohol effects are dimmed, you feel more cold, so you need to keep drinking. In remote areas, nights can get dark. People will not have windows, and if anyone has, they will fill it up with windows covers, which basically means putting several wood boards. Nights are dark. Pitch black dark if you get even about 100 meters away from the civilization. You can't see your own hands or body. You need to have sufficient lighting. The more batteries the better. You don't have diesel stuff at all, unless it is specially designed. You should have gas generators, gas cars, gas everything. Diesel will gel up. Diesel engines can't start combustion, or there must be specially designed engines, which have spark plugs. You don't shut off the car unless you get everything you need. You will sometimes need to heat up the car before starting it, because it just won't start. Meat. You don't waste any body parts. You will clean off the large intestine of all the poop and eat whatever part is edible. You eat the heart, brains, and even break up the bones sometimes for the marrow of a horse or a reindeer out of a 100 kilograms carcass. 20 kilograms is the highest amount that should go waste. The skins are used. The most expert folks will be able to reduce the wastage 16 to 18 kilograms. The amazing thing is, eating up all the body parts ensures that people are never ever deficient in any macro or micronutrients. Metal is no good. If the temperatures drop, the metal can become brittle. It doesn't conserve heat. It conducts heat too well. Wood. Your body will stick to metal. Wood is the way to go. You can burn metal. You can burn wood. You don't keep fuel in your home. Fuel means wood. Butane and propane are cute, but you don't have enough to stock up for the entire winter. Once winter starts, you can't get more either. You can always go into the forests and get more wood. You learn to kill and clean a carcass. Really, deer, horse, and whatever animal you come across. You don't want to sweat, so you don't heat your home too much. You sweat, you die. You want to work hard, okay, but do not sweat. Sweat equals death. Sweat will go into your clothes. Water is a good conductor of heat, way better than air. You will get cold. If you sweat too much, your clothes will freeze and stick to your skin. The sweat ice will kill you in a few hours. If you sweat, wipe it off, and if you're in home and you sweat, open the door to cool down the home. You don't sweat. Home does not mean a 3-bedroom American suburban house. It means a 300 square feet wood cabin. A single room, with some walls strategically placed around the door, to not let the cold air in. More rooms means more wood to heat everything. Wood is not infinite. You need to go into the forest with a few people, where 60% will keep a watch, 20% will cut, and the remaining 20% will do the odd jobs and gathering, cutting up of the trees felled. You can also sweat while cutting wood. You don't want to go for wood in middle of the winter. So, a single room cabin. Intimacy isn't taboo. It's the same as America was during the period of settlers moving west. You will probably see your parents going at it. No worries, you're not the weird one. The weird one is who's not seen intimacy. There aren't any jobs. Survival is your job. If you're from a city like Miami, or from California, where the temperature doesn't go below 0 C, and it's hot and humid, you can't live here without acclimatization. You need to move north, slowly, spend a winter and then move further north. You can die from the cold if you aren't acclimatized.
I had to kill an intruder. I've personally never experienced anything as bone-chilling and mind-boggling as this, and this is the first time I'm ever talking about it. When I was 16 years old, during the summer I sat for my grandma. She was at hospital, and I was told by my parents it would only be a weekend, but my grandma can be in hospital for weeks, sometimes. My grandma specifically asked for me to come over. She said she would let me use all of her twin-sized bed and also something called her bedpan I could use. I had appreciated her idea, but ultimately decided to set up camp in the guest bedroom for as long as it takes before I could go home. Seeing as it was early on a Friday, and I had been at school for the whole day, I had decided to try and invite a couple friends to my house, but none of them wanted to come over or talk to me. It was safe to say I was tuckered out, and shortly after turning on my television and smoking a fat-ass spliff, I drifted into a deep sleep on the sofa. I was jolted awake from my sleep by a strange noise. Slowly opening my eyes, I looked around me. I felt like someone was watching me. My eyes lasered around the room. I locked eye contact with someone peering through the window in between the gap in the curtains, and my heart begins to beat as loud as a drum. I try and make out the details of their face, but they are completely shrouded in a thick mist of night blackness. They start to slowly reach for the frame of the window, looking to descend into my sleeping quarters as I had foolishly left my window open. I sat up in my bed. I reached for the closest thing on my nightstand, a cup of dentures, and pinged it at the shape, sending the shadow of a figure into a hasty retreat. I was calm under the stress and felt no need to panic. Although I remembered locking the front door, I decided to check, just in case I didn't, as I was more fated than a hoe. I got to the front door to see if it was locked. It was, just as I thought. My heart instantly slows, and I sigh a sigh of relief. Although under further investigation, looking through the peephole, I saw someone standing on the porch. I couldn't make much out of them as a person due to how fated I was, but I felt safe enough to keep my nerves calm, just enough for me to get back into bed, and I pursued to sleep. As I laid in bed, I held my breath for a moment or two. In the moment I wasn't breathing, I swore I could hear someone, a person outside my window. I perked my ears up, and about 30 seconds later, I heard it again. This time I could make it out. Let me in. I am frozen with fear, and I look towards the window, but the curtains are covering me from seeing whoever is saying that. I stop everything I was doing before and only listen. I don't need to hold my breath to hear mutterings anymore. Either my hearing is getting better, or whoever is speaking is nearing closer by the second. It was safe to say I was pretty unsettled, so I took a look behind my curtain. Instant waves of panic and dread cover my skin with chills and goosebumps, and my blood curdles into a cold spirit, and I was met face to face with someone attempting to pry open my bedroom window. Although they aren't succeeding, I am scared enough to make my way to the kitchen, blissfully hoping I could wait out the rest of the night there, peacefully. There aren't any windows looking into my grandma's kitchen except from a glazed one beside the front door, and I could see them looking into the house at me, knocking on the front door. It frightened me so much to the point I had begun mulling over and assembling a plan to escape the horror. Rain began to pour outside. I realized at that point I needed to call the police, and I ran to my bedroom for my phone. I dialed 911, and the incessant banging and moaning at the door is unbearable and inescapable. Paired with the dreary horridness of my blazing, my mind is veiled with fog. I crawl to the kitchen, as to avoid being seen by this unlawful intruder. Clambering up onto the countertop, I was put on hold by the police line. For 5 minutes I waited, until I realized there was no use. I hang up on them after saying my address and that someone was trying to kill me. Even if they don't come, it doesn't matter. I took matters into my own hands. I stand up. I unsheathed a knife from the nightstand, in a last-ditch effort for my life, and I grew the balls to walk my ass to the door, not crawl. Keeping in line of sight of the door, I could make out a feint. Let me in, let me in, let me in. I swung the door open and thrust my blade wildly into the figure of the night. A swift fleet of attacks and an expression of shrieks and a pathetic flump as this measly intruder's frail body hit the floor wrung into the night's thin air. I watched as the intruder writhed in agony on the floor, bleeding out from lacerations. They actively gushed and pumped blood from their cut skin. Open stab wounds oozed crimson blood from pink flesh, and I could see corners of the raw intestine beginning to simply slide from the slices I had delivered. I vomited with adrenaline and proceeded to stomp on their head until satisfied. This intruder is a she, and this she was dressed in a hospital gown and had the clothes of my grandma in a clear plastic bag, along with a hospital wristband with her name on it. Whoever this was, she knew my grandma was living here, and was at the hospital. This crazy stalker must have known what they were doing, and knew to imitate my own grandmother before coming to the house. The dark contorting lump of bleeding mess on floor gargled, "Why? Why me? Why grandma? Please," and I couldn't help but get on one knee, pull her by her hair off the floor, and scoff in her contorted and contusioned face, at her failed attempt to fool me. The grandma stunt, oldest trick in the book honestly, so pitiful. Without a single second thought, I finished her off execution style where she lay, and I waited patiently for the police to come and award me with a Medal of Honor.
Got flashed by women when I was 11 years old. In April of 1999, when I was in 6th grade, my entire class had a massive field trip to Yellowstone National Park. It was part of a program called Expedition Yellowstone, and it, I believe, was funded in part by grants of some sort. Anyway, my small school in the rural South got to send the entire 6th grade, about 50 students, to Yellowstone every year for like 5 or 6 years, and I got to go. We traveled by charter bus as opposed to school bus for the 36-hour road trip, stopping for fast food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner during the trip. We had stopped in Lincoln, Nebraska at a strip mall, where some of the out parcels were fast food restaurants. We all went into whichever fast food joint we wanted. There were a couple to choose from, with our designated chaperones, ate, and came back out to the bus. Now, this particular strip mall where the McDonald's was located was also home to a bar, called Critters. We were sitting on the bus waiting for the rest of the group to come out and reboard so we could leave, when a couple of well-endowed young women came out of the bar towards another charter bus which was also sitting in the parking lot. I can only assume that they got the two buses confused, or they thought our bus was full of their friends, or were just drunk. It was still daylight, by the way. I don't know. But these two young women decided to raise their shirts and flash our bus full of 6th graders. It wasn't just a brief flash either. No, this was an extended period of time during which these girls had their breasts exposed. The kind of flash that you would normally see in a Girls Gone Wild video. Chaos ensues on our bus. Teachers, chaperones, counselors, parents, and probably even the bus driver as well, were all running and diving into the aisles of the bus, trying frantically and unsuccessfully to cover the eyes of all these innocent 12-year-olds, but we were having none of it. It was the highlight of the trip, and we were barely halfway there on a 2-week-long expedition. This includes our bus getting trapped in a whiteout blizzard in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming on the way back, limping back to the closest town, and sleeping on the floor in the high school gymnasium. Next came the jokes, which you'd expect from a bunch of pre-adolescent kids. The Grand Tatas. The Twin Peaks. Etc. It was awesome, and I dare say it was a. Today I messed up by inviting my girlfriend over for Christmas. So this happened when I was 16, I'm 63, so definitely not today, but the memory is as fresh as if it was this morning. My father, now deceased, was, well, I won't say odd, but yeah, a bit odd. He had a big heart and really tried, but he was socially awkward sometimes, maybe not quite thinking things through, not on the spectrum really, just unaware of social norms. I was nervous about inviting girlfriend over. I was new at the whole girlfriend thing, and my girlfriend and I had only been on 2 dates, but what could possibly go wrong inviting her over for a minute or two on Christmas Day? I drove over to her place, picked her up and brought her home. Then my dad dashes out and comes back with the camera. We take pictures and he insists on including my girlfriend with the family to make her feel welcome. He then hands out a poorly wrapped presents for the ladies in the family, presents for my mom, sister, and he graciously includes my girlfriend in the family. So far so good. So my girlfriend goes first and opens up what appears to be an oddly shaped funnel. Same for my sister and mother. They look at each other puzzled. Dad explains it's a she-we, a modern miracle in 1975. And no, this wasn't intended as a gag gift. He was sincerely trying to help the ladies overcome their disability and pee while standing up. F my life, girlfriend was mortified. I was ruined. Somehow we stayed together as a couple, although it was touch and go for a while. So I guess it wasn't a complete mess up. That which doesn't kill a relationship makes it stronger. Anyway, we are still together today, 47 years later. What's the creepiest thing you've encountered while working in forensics? One of the creepiest cases I ever worked pertained to a young 17-year-old who was killed in a car crash. I cleared the scene and prepared to notify the family. It was just hitting 2:30 a.m. The victim was a young beautiful blonde girl whom we identified by her driver's license. The car was also in her name. As I knocked on her parents' home, I had a uniformed deputy with me, A lady cautiously answered the door, then allowed us to come inside. I cleared my throat and calmly told her that an accident had occurred and that the vehicle was registered to her daughter. I am sorry to inform you that your daughter was killed. Although we believe this is her, we need a positive identification. The mother gasped and yelled no way, and I showed her the driver's license and registration. Mom kept denying it was her daughter that had been killed and that this must be a joke. All of a sudden, a young girl walks into the living room and asks what is going on. This girl was identical to our victim. She could have passed as an identical twin. Eventually, it turned out her daughter had lent a classmate her ID and car. I had to now notify the real mother. Have you ever had a close friend cross a line in your relationship? If so, what happened? I was dating a guy for about a month, told my best friend all about him and how much I liked him. My friend and I had tickets to a music festival, and the guy decided last minute he was going to come also because he liked some of the bands that were there. Went to the festival, had a great time, and got an Uber back to an Airbnb we had rented for the weekend. Walked in, guy I was dating went to the room we were sleeping in to lay down. I go into the kitchen to get water, hear guy yelling my name, walk in on my best friend on top of guy straddling him. Uncomfortable confrontation ensues. Well, after a few months I realized this dude has nothing positive to say about anything other than himself, ever. He crossed the line though when he yelled at my girlfriend about interrupting while the men are talking. Burned that bridge in about 12 minutes after we got home. She flat out told me, I just get bored of people, so I just quit talking to them and find new people. Take a wild guess at how that ended for me. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother I will help him and his children but not his wife? My brother and I were adopted into the same family. He's white and I'm a dark-skinned black woman. Our parents were an interracial couple and our family had some unique challenges over the years, but our parents did their very best for us and tried their hardest to get us as much information as possible with our birth families. It was a little easier with mine because I was orphaned and I had 2 older living birth relatives who were just incapable of caring for me and needed care themselves. My brother had a very different story and he had no information at all. When he was 20, he met his wife. They married after 2 years of dating. She always gave me bad vibes. Around the time they got engaged, he told me she kept bringing up his birth family and how he should find them. Before the wedding, I had told him he didn't have to do anything, but he knew mom and dad would help him and he'd have my support. She went behind his back to find him via DNA and it was a shit show. But for some reason he forgave her and decided to meet the people, which she was thrilled about. It was around that time she told me to get lost because he had sisters who were actually related to him. And not, you can guess, the slur who always made his life more difficult. She told me I was crazy if I thought I'd be in her wedding photos. She also said our parents should get used to having only one child. My brother had already started to pull away by then. And because I was hurt and angry, I never told him what went down between his now wife and I. I chose to not attend his wedding. And I know from our parents that the day was very messy. And then he reached out and apologized for letting anything come between us. We have been back on speaking terms for over a year now. It took a while, but we are doing so much better. I always loved my brother, but was hurt by the stuff that went down between us and me and his wife. A few days ago, my brother's family ended up in a shelter. He lost the job he had for many years and took a huge pay cut in the new one, at the same time that his former landlord decided to illegally kick them out by changing the locks. My brother did contact a lawyer, but nothing is as fast as they show on TV and the movies. And they have no place to go. I live in the same city, which would allow him to keep what job he is now at least. And so he asked if they could stay. I said I would help him and the kids and they could stay. But his wife is not welcome in my home. He told me he would take that, which did surprise me some. His wife is pissed. She came after me about separating her children from her and how unhealthy it will be for them to see her in a shithole while they're safe and comfortable with me. She called me all kinds of names, like petty and bitchy and an asshole. But it was the comment about the kids that got me questioning. Am I the a-hole? What's the worst case of bad parenting you've ever witnessed? I've been a city firefighter for 20 years, and much of that time has been spent working in a district that is extremely low income and high crime. So unfortunately I have seen a lot of children being raised in horrible conditions, especially these last 5 years with the assault of the heroin epidemic that is currently plaguing us. But the one case that immediately came to mind happened about 10 years ago and wasn't drug-related, but was simply horrible decision-making by a parent. It was summer, late afternoon, and we were sent for a person struck by a vehicle. When we arrived, the patient, a 24-ish-year-old male, was on the ground in the middle of a large apartment complex access road, and he was being restrained by the ambulance crew. He had an altered level of consciousness, only responded to painful stimuli, his pupils were blown, and he was combative as hell. He also had blood coming out of both ears, and when we used a 4x4 bandage to collect the blood, it showed it contained cerebral spinal fluid. Not good signs at all. As we jumped in to help the ambulance crew, I checked the car nearby for damage and found none. There was an older lady, maybe late 40s, standing next to the vehicle while she was being questioned by a police officer on the scene. Long story short, the patient started crashing fast. He was rushed to the hospital where we later learned he died. The police officer came over as we were cleaning up the scene and said, "Did you hear what happened?" Apparently the patient was the woman's son. She was leaving to go to the liquor store and had refused to buy her son beer. He got upset and jumped on her car, laughing, and said something like, "You're taking me there even if I have to ride out here." Then, according to her statement, she took off, gradually building up speed. He managed to climb from the hood to the roof where he was laying on his belly, screaming for her to stop, while holding on to the front windshield. She estimated she was going 30 to 40 miles per hour when she slammed on the brakes, shooting him headfirst into the road, killing her son. One thing I've learned on the job is that while every child deserves a parent, not all parents deserve a child. I've been secretly making my 2 coworkers fat for talking crap about a friend of mine. I've known my friend since high school, I'll call him Bob. We're both in our 40s now and ended up briefly working for the same company, but different locations. Sometimes employees travel to different locations for training and whatnot, and a little over a year ago, my buddy ended up here for a half day of training. My friend has a lisp, he's self-conscious about it, was teased in high school and it's affected his self-image and self-esteem. The guy is all hard and really is a cool guy if you get to know him. He's a bit overweight, and pretty self-conscious about that too. I wasn't here the day Bob came to train, but the next day I went to the front office with 2 of the secretaries to say good morning like always. We had a good rapport, and they were talking with a fake lisp and absolutely cracking up like it was the funniest thing in the world. I knew my friend was here, but asked them anyway what the lisp was about. The 2 jerks didn't know Bob was one of my oldest friends. They could barely keep a straight face about how the guy from the other place sounded like a loser who would probably never find a woman. He looked greasy. He was fat. Can you imagine what he would sound like in bed, lisping and sweating? Ha ha ha. Stuff like that. I was pissed, but kept a good poker face. Kinda chuckled and said something to the effect of "You guys are terrible." They seemed proud of themselves. These 2 jerks have a sweet tooth. For the last year, I have relentlessly been bringing them donuts, chocolates, Starbucks drinks with so much sugar they could give an elephant diabetes, ice cream cakes, candy, anything that is calorie dense and sweet. It's not hard to make them eat. I just say stupid cliche funny stuff like diet starts tomorrow. Or if you take small bites, there's fewer calories. They laugh and eat. No joke, they have gained about 40 pounds apiece and now complain about crap like finding clothes and being tired all the time. One of them was spilling her guts to the other about her husband not wanting to sleep with her anymore. Bob never found out about what they said. He left the company for greener pastures shortly after that incident. He's doing good. I have no intention of stopping. What's something that you can teach me? My mom was on welfare when I was 10 years old. She had been taking a bus, public transportation, to school every day to become a dental technician. Her goal, which she worked towards and accomplished, was to get her family off of welfare. On the day she was scheduled to graduate, her unemployed boyfriend was supposed to watch my brother and me. The plan was for him to pick us up and take us on a hunting trip with him and his friends. Not that we would have been allowed to shoot anything, but we were really excited. He never showed up. Mom called the neighbor and asked her to watch me and my brother, to which the neighbor agreed. I was really upset and disappointed that we weren't going hunting. As my mom was leaving for her graduation, I was crying and begging her to stay. She said she loved us and left. When she got back, she asked me how my day was. I told her I hated her. That was it. That was all I said. I hate you. I can only imagine the strength it took for her to hold back the tears as she got my brother and me ready to go for a walk. Right outside the door, there was a brand new BB gun sitting on the porch. We lived in Cherry Ridge Terrace, which is located on a mountain in the woods of Barnesboro, Pennsylvania. There are tons of wooded trails around those parts. She took my brother and me down a trail. Located in almost every tree, shrub and plant, were empty aluminum cans. One by one, we switched off possession of the BB gun and shot cans out of those trees and shrubs the whole way down the trail. It was so fun for us. As it turned out, my mom had gotten a $50 graduation gift from her father and bought a BB gun before she came home from her graduation. She walked that trail and put those cans all around before she came in the apartment, so she could take us hunting. And right before she did that, I told her that I hated her. That was the last time I told my mom I hated her. And when I saw this question, I called her and apologized for saying that I hated her, 30 years ago. What I can teach you right now is something I learned 10 minutes ago. It is never too late to apologize for something.
My cheating ex wants me to buy a present for his other child. My ex cheated on me for most of our relationship. I found out during my pregnancy with our daughter and he had the other girl pregnant too. My daughter was a June baby and theirs was an October baby. They also got married the following February. To say things between us had been tense is an understatement. Ex's wife didn't know immediately that he was with me or that we had been together since we were 15. She hated me for overshadowing her own pregnancy with mine. She hated me even worse when she needed an emergency C-section and had so many complications that a hysterectomy had to be carried out. The tension between us all then was at its worst. Ex's wife wanted me to give up my daughter for them to raise both girls together as real sisters, and when I refused, we had all the drama. I don't even think she would have been able to love my daughter had I done that. But I think she wanted more than one badly enough that she thought my daughter would do since she was already born. Ex and I now communicate through an app mostly. We share custody of our daughter, picking up time to minimize the contact between us. This has worked for many years, though I know it is not ideal for my daughter overall. My daughter and her half-sister have a very high conflict relationship. It's over me and my ex's wife. Ex's daughter has picked up her mom's attitude toward me and dislikes me and believes I keep her sister from her real family. And my daughter doesn't like ex's wife, which annoys her half-sister. This has been communicated to me a number of times by my daughter and also by my ex, who will send random texts about it. I never respond because our mandated communication is done through the app. X and his wife had some financial problems over the last 6 months. For my daughter's birthday, she got a card and a gift card, and my ex told her in advance he wouldn't be able to get her much. I was able to get her a present as normal, though I splurged a little this year and got my daughter a gaming laptop. She was so happy. X became aware of this when my daughter spent a bit of time with her grandparents and she asked them if she could bring the laptop to their house. X asked her about it and she told him I bought it as her birthday gift. Now my ex's daughter's birthday is a couple of weeks away and he wants me to buy her a gift, something I have never done before. He said the money situation is still tight and he doesn't want her to get nothing. I told him I would not be buying her a gift. And he blew up the app on my phone saying, I should be doing this so his daughter isn't left with a lackluster birthday. X said I had never done anything to help the dynamic with the girls and never cared about the pain he and his wife were in, and this was one thing I could do. Am I an a-hole?
You suddenly gain godlike powers over the universe. What is the first thing you do? Realize that I now have the power to accidentally delete existence and then immediately and accidentally do so as my brain considers how I'd do it. Stop time, chill for 1,000 years. Probably change the laws of this universe to make it an abundant utopia before piecing out and making my own universe with elves, dwarves and magic. Well, a while back I had a lucid dream and I had godlike powers. The first thing I did was clap my hands together over my head and summon bees while screaming, bees. They scared me when they started flying around, so I woke up. So I guess that.
What was the downfall of the popular kid in your school? I'll call her Betty so she can feel okay if she sees this. Betty, the banker's daughter, only banker in that small town, was petite, cute in a 16-years-old way, long blonde hair, blue eyes, creamy complexion and an all-around likable kid. Naturally she was also a cheerleader. She was in all the same upper-level classes with me, every science and math class and foreign language class. One day I noticed her advanced calculus exam and she missed more than I did. Her grade, however, was higher than mine. The questions were not weighted per points. After that I made an effort to watch and she often missed more, but her grade was always higher. She graduated valedictorian, beating out one little gal that had worked so very hard to do well. Not me, they were both straight A students. They even added up every score they earned and of course Betty won. Betty got a scholarship to a very good school. Sadly Betty failed her courses. Angry she came back home and refused to go to college. To induce her to go to the lowly state college back home, Dad could influence that school. He bought her a nice shiny red sports car. She was taking a science class with me and that sweet personality was not there. She just looked angry still. I don't think she completed that class as I did not see her after the first test was given. Betty would have been so much better off if the school had not buttered her scores. I truly hope she learned that her own work and grades should have been sufficient. Ladies, what lie were you told about your health that no one knows? I don't talk to my mother anymore because of this. After my 15th birthday party, I found out my mom had been gatekeeping her weight loss method from me. I'm someone who's always struggled with stubborn weight. I always woke up feeling bloated and no amount of exercise or diet has gotten rid of that feeling. On the other hand, my mom is in her 40s, has glowing skin, and has managed to stay under 150 pounds. I always asked, actually begged to find out what she was doing because it was always sustainable. 3 nights before my quince, I had trouble fitting into my dress. I was so mad and crying cause we had spent so much money trying to fit it on me and now it wouldn't. My mom came into my room and noticed what was wrong. She gave me her thermos and told me to drink. I asked what it was but she wouldn't tell me. The next morning I drank it again, and the next morning again. I woke up differently. I felt cleaner, I was breathing better, I felt cleansed inside. I fit into my dress perfectly again. I asked her what she gave me but she refused to tell me. That's where my resentment started, honestly. Some months later I was digging around for Cheez-Its and grabbed the wrong box. Hey girl? I did some research on their website heygirltea.com and I nearly screamed. All she did was buy a cleansing tea. I thought those were just fake home remedies. I actually wanted to bash my mom's head in. Why would she hide the tea from me? I confronted her and she told me she found it accidentally and was scared if she told me about it, that it would start a chain reaction and her secret would be out and the tea would run out of stock. Just out of spite, that's why I'm writing this to y'all. Ladies, don't be butthurt, go try Hey Girl Tea for yourself, and let's actually help each other out instead of gatekeeping like Las Toxicas. For those asking, I genuinely am not speaking to my mother anymore. This was just one of her many secrets along with doing BDSM videos behind my dad's back. I ruined my happy and loving relationship. Now she can't see a future with me and called our engagement off. Me and my ex-fiancé were, in my eyes, the perfect couple. Every day felt like magic. We loved each other relentlessly and unconditionally. Days turned to months and months into years. We loved the same music, the same shows. We loved going out and just as much loved staying in bed all day. There wasn't a dull moment and we had amazing intimacy physically and emotionally. The relationship itself was never perfect, but the way we handled our issues made me believe this was the one. Before her I had only ever been with one other person, but that was just a silly high school relationship that never meant much. She was not my first but definitely the best, but OFC it turned out to be too good to be true. I have many diagnosed mental issues that I never really got proper help for. Unresolved trauma and resentment from my younger years mixed with a constant flow of undying insecurity and jealousy was just too much for my beautiful fiancé. I put her through hell constantly but she never let it get in the way. I constantly watched what she did when she would go out. She willingly shares her location. I always got upset at the mere mention of a man being near her. It was too much looking back now. She did constantly mention how sometimes I was very draining and made her fear doing things in OFC. I took it personally rather than actually taking accountability. I kept pushing and pushing till a couple nights ago where she admitted she can't see a future with me anymore. She loves me but not in the way I thought. I'm destroyed, I hate myself, I hate that I did this to her and now I lost the love of my life. I don't know what I'm looking for in this post but I have no one in my life now and I just need to get this out there. I ruined my happy and loving relationship, now she can't see a future with me and called our engagement off. Me and my ex-fiancé were, in my eyes, the perfect couple. Every day felt like magic, we loved each other relentlessly and unconditionally. Days turned to months and months into years. We loved the same music, the same shows, we loved going out and just as much loved staying in bed all day. There wasn't a dull moment and we had amazing intimacy physically and emotionally. The relationship itself was never perfect, but the way we handled our issues made me believe this was the one. Before her I had only ever been with one other person but that was just a silly high school relationship that never meant much. She was not my first but definitely the best, but of course it turned out to be too good to be true. I have many diagnosed mental issues that I never really got proper help for, unresolved trauma and resentment from my younger years mixed with a constant flow of undying insecurity and jealousy. It was just too much for my beautiful fiancée. I put her through hell constantly but she never let it get in the way. I constantly watched what she did when she would go out, she willingly shares her location. I always got upset at the mere mention of a man being near her and it was too much looking back now. She did constantly mention how sometimes I was very draining and made her fear doing things and of course I took it personally rather than actually taking accountability. I kept pushing and pushing till a couple nights ago where she admitted she can't see a future with me anymore. She loves me but not in the way I thought. I'm destroyed, I hate myself, I hate that I did this to her and now I lost the love of my life. I don't know what I'm looking for in this post but I have no one in my life now and I just need to get this out there. I let a vulnerable girl freeze all night and now everyone wants me dead. Am I the a-hole for not offering a girl I barely knew a hoodie and sweatpants to cover up her SLT elf costume when she ended up at our house after the bars and frats let out? I guess last night one of the more popular frats on campus was having a Christmas on the beach themed party so all around the bar area were girls dressed in bikinis with vague Christmas themes. My roommate is dating this total nut job named Sydney and as far as I knew they were broken up. At like 2 a.m., he bombs through the door with Sydney and her friend in tow, both dressed like SLT elves with way too much skin showing. My roommate and Sydney went to his room and still haven't come out. I was playing Fortnite and the other girl said she was the designated driver and was stuck. She asked if I minded if she charged her phone and hung out until she knew what Sydney was doing. I told her it was fine. Maybe 15 minutes later, she said something like, I know this is so weird for both of us but I'm not here by choice, I just don't want to bail on my friend but sitting here with a guy I don't really know in a bikini is weird and I'm cold. Do you have some sweats I can borrow? I see you every Monday and Wednesday and I promise I'll give them back. I told her no I wasn't comfortable with that. She asked if I at least had a blanket. I found one in my roommate's spare room but it was really small and said I was sorry it's the best I could do. She fell asleep on the couch and I went to bed. My older sister came to pick me up for breakfast and she saw the girl sleeping on the couch and asked why a half-naked girl is sleeping under a baby blanket. In the car, I told her what happened and she got so mad at me saying I had about 30 opportunities to be a really decent guy and I blew it. She said it sounds like the girl was trying to do the right thing by her friend and I could have let her use sweats, I could have let her sleep in my bed while I took the couch, I could have said she should go home and I'd drive Sydney home. But basically I was a jerk because I left an apparently nice girl in a vulnerable position and I didn't even care. She said that I need to grow up if I want to have friends and have some empathy if I ever want girls to like me. She has no idea if that girl was into me or not but I missed a great practice round of treating someone in a nice way that they may reciprocate.
So, my boyfriend knocked up his cousin. My boyfriend, 23 male, and me, 22 female. We've been seeing each other for about a year and a half now. About 6 months ago, we decided to take the plunge and move in together. He moved from a different state and brought a bunch of his stuff, including a box I had never bothered to check out till today. I was just doing some cleaning around the house, and knocked over this box. Curiosity got the best of me, and I started poking around in it. It was like one of those memory boxes, full of old pictures, concert tickets, boarding passes, that kind of stuff. I found this envelope at the bottom of the box, and even though I had a feeling I shouldn't, I opened it anyway. Inside, a hospital bill for an abortion. My stomach dropped when I saw the names on the bill. It was my boyfriend's and one of his cousins. He's always been pretty private about his family, didn't have the best relationship with his parents growing up, and usually avoids talking about them. I've always respected that, but seeing this, it messed me up. Like, how am I supposed to react to this? Why would he hide something like this from me? The whole thing went down when he was 19 and his cousin was 17. I wasn't even in his life back then, but this is a big deal, something I feel like I should have known about. When he got home later, I had to confront him. We argued, mostly about me snooping around his stuff, but I was desperate for answers. After a bunch of arguing, he finally broke down and told me what happened. It was a one-time thing. They were both excited teenagers, they had the house to themselves and things just happened. But then his cousin got pregnant. Panicking, he reached out to an older cousin, who helped them arrange an abortion. Once that was done, he closed the book on that chapter of his life and moved here to start over. I'm still trying to process all of this. What do you guys think?
My girlfriend thinks I'm gay because I do stuff with a guy for $1 million. She might break up with me. I've been dating my girlfriend for just under a year. Things have been going great and I felt like we were still getting closer every day until this situation popped up. A few days ago, my girlfriend and I were at a party with friends, and there was a new guy there. He seemed charming and nice, but when the topic of women came up, he said it's been years since he had any luck and he was going a little crazy. The conversation moved on and that was the end of that topic. Last night in bed, I was talking with my girlfriend before bed and we started to discuss the party. The new guy comes up and we agreed he seemed cool and we were both surprised he was having a hard time with women. I mentioned his comment about it being years since being with anyone and said I bet he's going nuts. My girlfriend laughed and said that maybe one of her friends would give him pity dome. I pointed out that at the party he said he loves the movie Amelie, her favorite movie ever. I like it too, so maybe that was worth slurping the gherkin. That probably sounds weird to people reading this, but it was a joking conversation and along the lines of how we make fun of each other. She laughed. Anyway, she said he was cute in a way, but not her type. She wouldn't go down on him for $1 million. I thought this was extreme and said if she wouldn't do it for $1 million, I certainly would. Heck, money is money and it would just be a few minutes probably. I was laughing, but now she wasn't. She stared at me and asked if I was serious. I said yes, that's a life-changing amount of money for something people do every day. She sat up and said that nobody who is straight would do that for any amount of money. She asked if I was gay. I said no. She asked if I would give her brother dome for $1 million and I said probably. She got angry and went to sleep. I thought that was the end of it, but this morning she told me she didn't want me to be at her place today and she needed time to think. She said she saw a future with me but is worried that I would eventually leave her for a man after years of lying to myself. I tried to convince her that my response was normal, but she wasn't having it. I texted my friend and asked if he would give me dome for $1 million. He replied, only if I don't have to give you any money. My girlfriend said he's probably gay too and it makes sense that you hang out with him. So now I'm home and maybe girlfriendless. So, once and for all, is it gay to do that for $1 million?
What is the most embarrassing thing you have ever witnessed someone else go through? It was at a huge science fiction convention, and my friend, whom we'll call Brad, had been dating longtime girlfriend and costume maker, Janet. Brad was nearly 15 years older than her. He was in his late 30s, and she was in her early 20s. She was a little quiet and reserved. It always seemed like she was bored and not very interactive around him. He always did the kissing, the hand-holding, and so on, and she always just stood there, smiling politely. Brad wanted me to make the formal announcement in a large gathering of about 100 to 200 people, so I did, and Brad got on stage with Janet, and he proposed. I can still remember the look on her face, alarmed, sad, and then pity. No, Brad. Just. No, she said quietly, then she ran away in an awkward gait. I don't think she was crying, but Brad looked horrible. Later, I found out, she didn't contact him for a week, and when she did, she showed up with his things and a formal apology that she led him on and so on. She dumped him. Said she was really sorry. Brad was crushed. And so embarrassed I haven't seen him since, and that was almost 15 years ago.
Has anyone ever walked up to an airport counter and said give me a ticket on the next flight out? How did it turn out? I was in Vegas. I had just won $33,000-ish off of a single roulette game. Our trip was ending a few days later, but at the time I still had a few days of PTO left and a few days off prior to returning to work, recovery days. I walked into the airport, slapped $4,000 on the counter and said, give me 2 first-class tickets to Miami. The tickets cost around $1,250 total for 2 and that included a return flight back to my home state, not first-class home. We bought a penthouse suite at $1,100 a night, 4 nights. Went to the most expensive restaurants in Miami every meal for all 5 days and 4 nights. I rented a Corvette convertible at around $200 a day. Went parasailing, would recommend it. Went snorkeling, it was scary as I have a fear of being eaten by sharks, would recommend it. Went to a very expensive sushi place and got a $900 sushi boat. Very cool. Tried puffer fish, wouldn't recommend it. We blew that $10,000 so fast, could have spent more. We went to a club and got bottle service at around $500. My evil twin bullied my friend and insists that she did nothing wrong. So, I reported her to the school and got her expelled. My sister has never been the nicest person. She got in trouble for bullying in elementary school and earlier in middle school and has gotten detention and ISS before, but this is the worst punishment she's gotten so far. She'll bully anyone that she thinks deserves it and give them the hardest time at school. She'll abuse that person physically and mentally. She also has her gang help her do these things as a hobby. They assault their victims, take money from them, and bully them online. Some victims transfer or drop school just not to see my twin again. A few weeks ago, I was playing basketball outside during lunch. My friends and I were having a good time when we saw a boy crying on the grass. My friends went to see what was wrong and this boy was telling us about how he was being bullied by a group of kids for being preppy. Kids were calling him gay and the F slurs. We told him we thought he was cool and not to mind the kids. After we calmed him down, we asked him if he wanted to play ball with us and we were amazed at how good he was. He said he's not really into sports but he was so naturally good, had us playing our hardest, and scored against a few of us when playing in teams. We encouraged him to potentially try out for the team in high school and he said he'd consider it. Over the past few weeks, we've started to hang out with him more and more. We were at the park playing with him and he dropped his phone. One of my friends picked it up and unintentionally opened up the messages on Instagram since he got a notification for it. He saw someone text him homophobic stuff and the boy noticed my sister was one of the kids sending him the messages. We told him it wasn't okay and that we'd go to AP with him. My sister and her friends were called into the office and they all got in a bunch of trouble. It was her, 3 other girls and 2 other boys, one of which is her boyfriend. My sister was the ringleader and the cruelest, so she got the harshest punishment and was expelled. My mother and father said I shouldn't have gone to AP and instead talked to them. My sister is calling me an a-hole, and a snitch and says she hates me. My friends are reassuring me we did the right thing. Even after my parents gave her a talk about homophobia. She said she was showing the boy the real world and insisting she did nothing wrong. Well, a few days ago, my parents were cleaning her room and found a burner phone. On there she had Discord. When my parents opened it up they found a slew of extremely racist and homophobic content that my sister was both consuming and writing. My sister has expressed no remorse so far. Once they saw those messages, my parents were horrified and grounded her for a few weeks from hiding this from them, and are looking for a therapist to try to de-radicalize her views. Anyway, my new friend is doing better than ever. Our new friend is going to join us at an overnight basketball camp. We met his parents and they thanked us for helping their son. They found a guy for private basketball lessons after I and my friends were pushing him to try out next year. The trainer said he was really good naturally and he's developed an increasing liking of the sport. His dad is a vendor at a local antique store and bought me and my friends some signed basketball memorabilia as a gift. His parents said they hadn't seen him this happy in a long time, and their son never opened up about the bullying to them. They told us he's much less angry now and went on about how we brought back the little boy who was always happy. My golden child brother convinced my entire family that my amazing girlfriend abused him even though it was his fault because he pranked her. Now they're forcing me to break up with her. I have been with my girlfriend Lola for 2 years and I've noticed that my brother has always been weird whenever someone talks about her or is around. My brother and I are very close and talk daily, but he usually tries to get out of talking to me when I bring up Lola. I thought maybe he was jealous of the time I was spending with her or maybe a little crush on her, but I didn't know for sure. Still, whenever we'd get together, he'd make comments about our 5-year age gap, poke fun at me for simping, and joke about her sleep disorder. Except, he takes those jokes way too far with pranks. My brother loves being pranked or pranking people. He loves to laugh and I genuinely believe that when he goes to prank people, he means it in a way to share the laughter. When he's to pull little pranks on Lola though, he does things that he figured out triggers her disorder, like making sudden loud sounds, jumping out to scare her, and doing the shaving cream bit while she was napping. I warned him not to mess with her while she's sleeping because it interrupts her regulated cycles, which isn't good for her. She's the worst kind of cranky when she's woken up. He looked like he understood and I thought that was that. I threw a New Year's Eve party a few days ago with my brother, girlfriend, and our friends. At some point, it was time for Lola's nap so she went to sleep in my room while I kept partying. A while later we all heard a scream, followed by cursing and something breaking. I panicked because all that noise was coming from my room, so I ran over there and found her yelling at someone who had been shoved. The person's face was covered by a spider mask that I knew belonged to my brother. Her friends calmed her down and that's when my brother got off the floor, took the mask off, and we saw that she had bruised his face pretty badly. He started bawling, telling me that she was insane and abusive. He only wanted to make sure she wasn't going to sleep through the ball drop. If that was the case, why did he have a spider mask on? At this point, everyone starts shouting back and forth. My brother looked terrified, and kept repeating that she was crazy. He insisted I shouldn't be with someone who could do this to her boyfriend's brother. My friends were yelling that if she did it to him she could do it to me. All of her friends were screaming that he was creepy for not leaving a sleeping girl alone. My brother told our mom that Lola hurt him and now she's furious. Lola left with her friends and my friends were picking sides. Everyone was arguing while the ball dropped, my mother calling me for the 10th time, and Lola finally texting me that she needs space to think. Since then we've lightly texted, she's expressed that she can't shake her fear of what happened, but she still hasn't told me from her side what happened. My family is trying to convince me to break up with her, and scolding me for not helping or standing up for my brother when he was being assaulted. They're also demanding an apology for not playing my part as an older brother. Now my aunt is making this 3-hour drive to come deal with the situation herself. I don't want to go against my family because they helped raise me and become the person I am, but I adore my girlfriend and I feel like I should be there to protect her. I don't want to push her boundaries but not talking to her is a different kind of hurt. My brother is convinced that he was doing a well-intentioned prank and was wrongfully punished for wanting to make sure everyone was enjoying themselves. But he knew he wasn't supposed to disturb her and he knew she was sleeping, so why would he go in there in the first place? If he had just let her sleep, this wouldn't be happening. It wasn't his priority to make sure everyone was having fun. This situation doesn't make sense and there's a lot that I don't know about, like why my brother feels weird talking about Lola and what really happened in my room that day. What should I do? What do girls think men like, but really don't? 1. Fake lips. I simply don't get it. So many women look beautiful before then they turn up with a trout pout and it's like, huh? 2. The chase. We really don't like that. If it ain't mutual it's a waste of time. 3. Playing hard to get. It's so frustrating for men to know that she likes you but you need to jump through hoops just to prove you want her. 4. Being a relationship chameleon. I don't want or need you to have the same interests as me, I want you to be yourself and share your interests with me. 5. Acting dumb. I want a woman whose brains kick my brains butt. 6. Putting down their friends in front of you. It disgusts me. If I'm chatting with you and your friend comes over, don't bully her half to tears. That just makes me feel horrible about talking to you at all. 7. Perfumes that stink out an entire shop when they walk in. 8. Oversized, flappy eyelashes. What is the point? Are you gonna blink at me when I need cooling down? 9. I feel like a lot of girls think that guys like toxicity. Things like who the F is she? Putting him down, acting like he doesn't deserve her, being overly jealous then complaining if he gets jealous. I know several girls who think that guys love that attitude, and maybe some do, but in my experience they like genuine love and kindness more than anything. 10. A challenge. We have enough going on, it's not cute for you to be a pain in the butt. How did you get kicked out of Christian camp? When I was 15 we got invited to go on a Christian camp, which is basically a bunch of students who signed up for it going to a building like a big sleepover, going hiking, obviously talking about religion and generally having a good time. Now something to note, I was and quite frankly still am an emo, so I was listening to a lot of different bands and singers that wouldn't be considered Christian. Anyway, me and about 15 other students signed up for this retreat. Most of us weren't religious, but it was a good time to get away from things. It was only a couple hours away from our school, but the mountains and greenery made it so peaceful. Well, on the first day there we got asked to come into the hall, introduce ourselves and talk about what was going on. Then they decided to have a little fun. I want us to go around and talk about our t-shirts and share why we wore them, said one of the Christian ladies. No one put their hand up to volunteer, so she started picking on people. She picked one guy who had a generic t-shirt on and he was reluctant to say anything. Come on now, talk about why you wore your t-shirt and what it means to you. You've got to do it. It's a fun little icebreaker. The boy awkwardly said that he wore it because he liked the brand and the color, and that was that. Then she saw my friendly face, not kidding, even though I was an emo I was super smiley. She said, "Oh, would you like to tell us all what's on your t-shirt and why you wore it? Come on, show us all how it's done." Oh well, she did ask for it. I'm wearing a band t-shirt because I like listening to their music, and what does that writing say? Going to hell. Silence. Well, needless to say we did not continue playing that icebreaker game and I was kicked out of the camp.
My cousin made out with me because it was a part of his mission. I, 19F, am in a different state than my cousins. I'll call him John, 19 male, and Derek, 16 male. I go to a D1 university in my state, and it's my second year enrolled. It is my cousin John's first year in college and he stayed in his home state, so he lives about 3 hours away from me. However, his friend, I'll call Jacob, 18M, was offered an athletic scholarship for my school, so he moved here. During my cousin's graduation party in May of 2023 I was told to look out for Jacob, as both John and Derek had told him that I would be at the school he was going to, and shortly after the party Jacob followed me on Instagram. In July John had asked me if I had seen Jacob around campus. Classes didn't start back up until late August, so I had no reason to be in town on our campus at that time. It was a weird question, but I brushed it off. 1 week ago Jacob messages me on Instagram and asked for my Snapchat account so he could add me on it. I didn't see anything wrong with it, so I sent it to him. 2 days after that he asks me to confirm that I am John and Derek's cousin, and once I did there was no response. Tonight he messaged me, and once I responded he sent this: "I mean this in the least weird way possible. I'm actually supposed to hook up with you. It's a part of the mission. No one else in my life is connected to Jacob in any way besides my cousins, and it's starting to make me feel physically ill. It hurts me that my family that I've been so close to all my life, that they go around and turn this on me. Me and John are only around 8 months apart, so we were pretty close, and now I feel like I have to stop seeing him as my cousin but as a man who will hurt me, and now I have to see my younger cousin that way too, because with them if one was in on it they both were. I don't know if I should tell me dad. I call my dad at least every other day. He's my best friend and these are his nephews. I don't want my grandparents to know. I think it would actually send one of them to an early grave."
I was kidnapped by my family's murderer. I was just 15 when it happened. Our family and my girlfriend came back from France. We were driving in the Netherlands when our car broke down. We decided to grab our tents and sleep in a forest. That was a choice I regret for the rest of my life. I explored the forest until I saw a rundown cottage. It looked abandoned until I saw 2 figures moving behind the curtains. I thought nothing of it. I said to myself, must be the residents. I grabbed some tree branches until I heard my mom screaming. As I looked I saw my mom getting stabbed and dragged towards the house. I hid behind a tree. I was too afraid to attack the 2 figures because I saw that they each had 1 revolver in their pocket. I tried to make a run for it. They spotted me. I heard 1 gunshot. As I came to our campsite, I looked for my family. Only my dad and girlfriend were left. I said to them, "We need to get the duck out of here." My heart sank as my dad said, "Mom has the keys." We had to go back, but I saw in the distance the 2 figures sprinting towards us. I yelled to my girlfriend and dad, "Run." We all started running. I held my girlfriend's hand so I knew she did not stay behind. My dad saw a car of 2 hikers, but the only problem is, there were no keys. My dad yelled, "Shit." He tried to hotwire the car, but he got shot in the head. I was in shock. My dad died. We turned, and those 2 figures came walking to the car. As I was crying I pulled my dad's corpse off the driver's seat. I tried to hotwire the car. Those 2 figures were not shooting us. I started the car. I started to drive, until I heard my girlfriend screaming. She was getting dragged out the window. With all the power in me, I punched 1 figure on his nose. It had metal armor around its face, and my hand started bleeding. I pulled on my girlfriend's leg, hoping I would drag her back. Before I knew it she was gone. I started driving. I was so sad and scared, I could not even cry anymore. I ignored all traffic laws. I didn't even know traffic laws. I was 15. I raced to the police station. Then my story became famous. I hated telling the story, reminding me of that tragic night. 6 months later, I was on my phone. My girlfriend sent something in our group chat. I was shocked. The message and picture were more shocking. It said, "I'm alive. But they said this is the last message you will receive from me. Don't search for me. I saw in the picture she had short hair. I saw a window. I saw her car in the distance in the picture. She is in the same house. I regret that I did not go to the house at that moment. 5 years later, I heard someone knocking on the door. It was a police officer. She said I needed to come with her, so I stepped into the car. The weird thing is, there were no signs on the inside of the car that it was a police car, the same on the outside. It was just an ordinary hatchback. The woman stepped in the car. I did not trust this, but I was ready to fight her if needed. We drove by the police station. I knew something was wrong. I said to her, "Where are we going?" She said, "You will know this place." An hour went by. As we approached the forest, memories came to mind. My heart sank. I saw our old car. I yelled at the woman, "You murderer." An angry expression came on her face. She yelled back, "You should not have trespassed." I thought in my mind, was that the excuse to murder my family? We approached the house. I saw the window where my girlfriend Chloe had made the picture she sent to the group chat almost 6 years ago. I thought about what happened to her. Is she here? Is she alive? Would she remember me? She opened the car door. No gun pointed at me or anything. Just a friendly middle-aged woman. I would not beat her up. Yet, she knew I had questions and wanted to investigate. I asked, "Where is she?" She said, "Find out for yourself." I opened the door. It was a rundown house. The smell was okay. I thought it smelled like decaying meat, but it smelled like a normal house. I walked further. I saw an old man, sitting on the couch reading a book. It was just a normal couple. How could they do such things? Until I saw what was hanging on the wall. It was the head of my dad, perfectly preserved. I saw the bullet hole in his head. I tried not to puke. The old man stood up and said, "Does he look familiar to you?" He laughed. I tried to keep myself calm and said, "Why did you do it?" He said, "We needed somebody for the ritual." I said nothing. What ritual? Who are these psychopaths? I walked even further. I saw stairs. I looked at the woman. She nodded in approval. I felt scared to go up those stairs, until I heard a muffled voice. Could that be? I ran immediately up those stairs. I opened the door. I saw a girl that looked like Chloe. She looked like she was 21. I was afraid to say anything. "Chloe?" I said. She looked at me with a bewildered face. She grabbed a knife and screamed, "Intruder." I began to run downstairs. The woman grabbed her and said, "It is okay. This is our new son." I was shocked. "What?" I said. "You know the truth now, so you are going nowhere," she said. I just accepted my faith, because running was never an option here. Look at what they did to my mom and dad. I do not want to ever get chased by them again. 3 months later. I'm now finishing up my story, still in their house. Nobody has gone looking for me. I still have contact with my friends, but I told them I moved to America. Chloe remembers me now, but she sometimes whispers in my ear we need to make a run for it. I don't know if I ever want to make an escape. I will be dead in seconds, and if I ever escape, that woman will find me. Also, they told me their names. Apparently the woman is called Martha. And the man, Dylan. So here I am, typing this on the computer. Hoping somebody will find this house and save Chloe and me.
My boyfriend finally told me about his fetish and now I'm scared of him. We have been together for about 1.5 years now. We have a great relationship and we have always connected physically very well. The trust in our relationship is strong and we share every detail of our lives with each other. He is a really quiet and reserved type of guy, and I've always loved his calm nature. But ever since we passed our year anniversary, I feel like things have been a little stale in our relationship. We went from being intimate a couple of times a week to maybe once a week, and lately I've been feeling like my boyfriend hasn't been very focused during intimacy. The disconnection that I had started feeling within our intimacy life started to affect my self-esteem as well, and finally, I decided that I needed to communicate with him how I was feeling. I ended up having a long tearful conversation with my boyfriend about how I had been feeling undesired by him and that I needed him to tell me how I could improve our connection during intimacy. My boyfriend broke down as well and began apologizing for his recent inattentiveness in the bedroom. He kept telling me that he never wanted me to feel unwanted by him and that, to him, I am the most beautiful creature in the world. At this point, we both started to calm down and I thought we were feeling better after getting a lot off of our chests. There I was thinking that we were about to reach the end of the conversation when my boyfriend suddenly asked me if he could tell me something without judgment. I was desperate to improve our love life in any way, so I let him speak and just listened to him, trying an open mind. My boyfriend then admitted that he had certain fetishes that he had been wanting to integrate into our love life, but they were a bit extreme. I thought he was going to say choking or something and I was willing to try something a little taboo just for him. What he actually ended up saying made my stomach heave. My boyfriend said that he wanted to buy a dog cage from a pet store and lock me in it before and after we were intimate. He said it was a very specific fantasy of his and he felt like if we tried it, it would rejuvenate our intimacy life. As much as I love my boyfriend, I was so disturbed when he was describing this concept, and I don't see myself agreeing to it anytime soon. Yet like I said, I am feeling more desperate every day to try anything to fix our physical relationship. I don't want to compromise my values, but I don't want to lose my boyfriend either. My son is hiding his sexuality from me. My boy is 20 years old, and he's my pride and joy. I admit I wasn't around much during his early years due to some personal struggles, but things changed when he was 12. He told me about some tough times with his mom and her boyfriend, so I got my act together and became a single and sober dad. Since then, he's grown into an amazing person, kind, loyal, brave, generous, and always positive, despite the challenges he faced. I do absolutely anything for him. I hope he knows that. He got into a top university across the country, and I was both sad and happy to see him go. I'm glad that he's able to achieve his dreams, but it just eats me up inside that he's left the nest. He comes home every other month, and I visit him too. Recently, he came back during the virus with his friend from uni. I'm pretty sure that friend is actually his boyfriend. They try to be sneaky, but I've caught them doing coupley things. I've seen them wrap their arms around each other, and I think I've seen them kissing before. However, the biggest piece of evidence I have is that, one time, when his friend was supposed to be sleeping in the guest room, I had randomly checked on my son before my morning run, and I found his friend sleeping next to him in his bed. Of course, I have no problem with this, but I just want them to know that no matter what I will support them. I want to make sure they know they don't have to hide their relationship at my house. I support them no matter what. Whatever makes my son happiest, is what I want for him. Should I talk to them about it or wait until they feel ready to tell me themselves? My abusive ex-husband needs a kidney. I'm a match. Trigger warning, essay. My ex-husband, 42 male, emotionally and sensually abused me, 33 female, for almost our entire relationship. He would accuse me of cheating on him because I didn't want to make love with him and then wake me up or keep me awake all night to essentially harm me. He would also blame me for everything wrong with him, from his scoliosis to his kidney problems. I finally had enough the year I turned 28 and separated from him, during which time he broke into my house to watch me sleep and to make sure I didn't have any new guys over. I sold my house and moved to a different city about an hour away. I forgave him and have maintained a tentative friendship from afar. I recently found out that not only does he need a kidney, but his whole family bailed on him, also that I am a match. I am tempted to help him, but that's a big commitment, and I'm sure my family would not be pleased. I also have 2 children under 5 who need my constant attention. He has 4 years to live, and I can't help but feel bad for him, but at the same time, I can't forget the trauma he put me through, for which I am still in therapy.
What's a time you read a book by its cover and was completely wrong? I was ready to run for my life looking at these fellas. In January 1989, I was doing a mountain biking camping trip through New Zealand's North Island. The weather had been unbelievably extreme the whole way. Either a cyclone or flesh-searing heat or mold-inducing humidity. No in between. My normally dirty blonde hair had bleached to jet white and my skin was rendered chocolate brown, in spite of the tube loads of sunscreen I juiced up with daily. As well, the riding situation was becoming decidedly not fun. 5 hours of grinding my knees to powder up each mountain in low gear, followed by 15 fantastic minutes down its other side at 40 miles per hour, and repeat. A week into it, and I was starting to question the wisdom of this entire solo trip. So far, it rated at about 90% pure hardship, 5% neutral and 5% actual enjoyability. One steaming afternoon, I stopped at a roadside burger joint in the middle of nowhere for a feed. Just as I exited the place to sit on a shaded outdoor picnic bench, a group of 4 bikers arrived on loud, black Harley choppers, black leather vests, the whole shebang. I ought to mention, as a guy who'd partied with Hells Angels in Alberta in the 70s, I thought these guys looked straight up dangerous. Their bikes were insanely loud, their clothes were the hardest of core, including New Zealand gang insignia, and they were all huge, tall, muscular Maori lads with some really happening tattoos. They even had tattoos on the throat and face long before this was a more common sight. Trying to mind my own business, I sat with my back to them as they dismounted their bikes. They then walked by me to enter, taking obvious note of me, my mountain bike and my large quantity of food, plus a giant pink strawberry milkshake. At the time and to this day, there was something of a European and Maori divide in that area of the world. That's putting it politely. Having traveled through the South Pacific Islands prior to arrival in New Zealand, I had a pretty good idea of the state of affairs between the islanders and white folks. Uneasy would sum it up. After about 10 minutes, the 4 stormed out with food and about a dozen large beers. One of them stops at my table and checks me out for a while without saying anything. Then he says with a very friendly tone, "Where you from, mate?" "Canada." "Toronto," I reply. "Fucking hell." He yells out, "He's a bloody Canadian." Not sure if this observation counted as a compliment or an insult. I said nothing. Just nodded and tried not to look nervous. I was very nervous though. My appetite was gone and I was ready for anything, and not expecting a pleasant outcome. From behind me, a voice boomed, "Hey Canada, you gonna be a rude prick, or you gonna get over here and have a pint with us?" The one guy just stood there, staring, then said, on the level, "Mate. We don't get many Canadians round here." I stood up, grabbed my food and moved to their table. Not only were they the opposite of how they looked, they were soft-spoken, smart and every bit as welcoming, non-stop hilarious and kind as every other Kiwi I met in my 2 months in New Zealand. I ended up having about 6 beers with these guys, which they refused to let me pay a cent for. I saw them off at the end with big bear hugs all round, then hopped back on my bike with a big grin on my face that lasted hours. Right until the next mountain or cyclone. I forget which.
Mother's side, I called my idiot stepdad a child lover and now he's pissed. Am I the a-hole for not correcting my daughter? I'm 39, I had my first child when I was 17, she's now 22, and I met my now husband about 2 years later when he was 27 and I was 19. We've been together for 20 years now, and I've had 3 more beautiful children. My 22-year-old loves her siblings, she's the best sister in the world. She dotes on them, helps them pay for extra expenses when my husband and I don't have any extra dollars to spare, and sees them as often as possible. She's an incredible daughter too. Smart, kind, and all around just a sweet girl. The problem is that she has never gotten along with my husband, not even when she was little. I thought at first that she was young and adjusting to change, but throughout her life and my marriage, she hasn't wavered on her dislike for him. She said that she doesn't like how he treats me/speaks to me. I try my best to keep the peace, but a few days ago I think I fell short in that. My youngest just turned 15, and to celebrate we had dinner at her favorite restaurant. My eldest usually avoids gatherings with my husband, but my 15-year-old really wanted her there, so she acquiesced and came with her girlfriend. At dinner, my husband made a sly comment about the 2-year age difference between my daughter and her girlfriend. My daughter responded by mentioning the age diff between him and I. She phrased it in a way that made it clear she views our age difference as wrong, and that she thinks my husband took advantage of my vulnerability. I changed the subject. When we got home after dinner and the kids were in bed, my husband began yelling at me for not defending him against my daughter. It was obvious that our other children didn't disagree with her statement, and that seemed to make him angrier. He said that because I never corrected my daughter in the past about her dislike for him, it's my fault that she hates him now. He also feels that this hate has caused our other children to hate him too. I have a feeling our 18-year-old son heard the argument, because he came into our room at the height of it, pretending he needed something. The next day my husband told the kids and I that my oldest will no longer be allowed in the home, and as a result my other daughters aren't speaking to him and my son has been very short with him. This hasn't helped to soothe his anger in the slightest, and I'm not sure what to do. I don't think it would have been fair for me to force my daughter to like him, and I believe she's free to feel however she wants. She's always been respectful and polite to him. But my husband told his family what happened at dinner, and now they all think my eldest is acting out of jealousy and resentment. My mother-in-law thinks I should have tried harder to help my daughter and husband get along when she was young, and that this conflict is my fault now. Did I cause this?
What's your what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas story? I woke up one morning with a super itchy spot on my PP. It itched for several hours, so I decided to investigate the area. I found a large blackhead and promptly squeezed it out. A couple months go by and the itching is back. I found a small skin tag had developed. It was uncomfortable as F. Over the next decade it grows from about 1 mm in diameter to a healthy 5 mm. This was never an issue until last month when I went to Las Vegas. I went on a bachelor party and was prepared for a zoinked out week. During the peak of the trip, while intoxicated on mushrooms, we found ourselves in a house full of intimacy workers. We did not waste any time and got freaky with multiple workers. The next day I could feel this throbbing in my undies. I opened them up to see what looks like an engorged tick. This mother effer was a fat goddamn 8 mm. He was purple, angry, and holy moly was he painful. I knew I had to do something but I didn't know what. I was desperate to not let it ruin the trip. So, I tied some floss around it as tightly as I could. A day passes with no change. I tie another piece of floss around it, this time tighter than the first. It hurt so bad. I swear it had its own central nervous system at this point. It might have even grown a small brain. I'm certain it cried out when it was cut off from the main supply. It became crusty and black. I tried to pull it off but it was still tethered to my healthy skin. I knew what I needed to do. I grabbed the nearest pair of scissors and it was messy. I'm fairly certain I could have lost an arm in a car accident and caused less mess. No amount of pressure made it stop. I feel like 92% of the man I was last week. 15 faithful years of partnership and now it must make its own way in life. I do feel as though a small, swollen part of my soul is gone. It's true that time heals all wounds, but I wonder if someday it'll find itself looking out a misty train window and think of me.
What's the best response to an unwanted dick pic? Oh hey, my ex had that disease too. Why does it look like that? And answer none of the following texts. Make a screenshot and send it to him. When he sees it you say oops wrong person. Aw, share a penis enlargement ad. One of the girls at work got a pic from another coworker. She sent back, I now.
My 12-year-old daughter tells me that her mental health is deteriorating, but I don't believe her. I am currently with my fiancé and we live on a farm. My oldest daughter Luna is 12, and she's from a previous relationship. She mostly stays with my ex-girlfriend in the city so she can be with friends and go to school. My youngest daughter is 2, and is from my current relationship. My eldest daughter has struggled with mental health for years, and I partly think it's because of her inability to take criticism. When my daughter was 8, I constantly called her overweight, because I told her she would be a loser in society if she does not lose it and so on. My fiancé always tried to intervene but it ended in a huge fight each time. I separated with my fiancé when Luna was 11 and she started living with her mom. From what Luna has told me, the things I said have impacted her deeply and she has tried to off herself 3 separate times, but I tell her that my strategies worked as she lost weight and she blows her mental health problems out of proportion. For the summer, Luna stays with me and I make her do work, such as planting seeds, building things, pulling grass, etc. My current fiancé and her have been getting along well. That is, until my fiancé got into a verbal fight with my daughter over wasting food she doesn't like. I have a few times caught my eldest daughter crying instead of working, but I don't pay any attention to it and tell her to keep working. Recently, my daughter has come in crying when she was supposed to be working and locked herself in the bathroom. I went to comfort her and she told me, my mind is telling me scary things. I told her it would be alright and she can continue working through the night and have the next day off work. Recently it happened again, but I need her to get her work done, so I told her to push through it and keep working. Luna has been pretty dull and upset lately, and whenever I give her tasks she seems on the verge of tears. She always seems to be in her own head and wanting to be left alone. I'm sure she's fine, but I can't help but think that it may be my doing. Prison guards, what's the most disturbing thing you've dealt with? Had a mentally ill man get arrested and brought into our facility. He was saying some pretty off-the-wall things, so the sergeant had us place him in the padded cell so he couldn't hurt himself. Fast forward a couple hours and this guy's mental state, combined with the substances he used, was rapidly deteriorating and becoming incredibly violent. This guy suddenly believes he has diamonds embedded in his colon. He believes if he can get them out, he can bribe us with the diamonds and we will set him free. Slowly but surely this guy starts shoving his hand up his back door. We are well into night shift and don't have the staff to do an extraction, so we call for backup from the street deputies. Backup is 30 minutes out. This guy manages to get his entire fist into his back door halfway up to the forearm. He then rips his hand out really fast. Following his hand was a torrent of blood and poop. He immediately shoves his hand right back up and pulls out again, increasing the amount of mixture spraying out his behind. He repeatedly does this while backup arrives and gets suited up into PPE. Extraction plans are laid out for a forcible removal to the hospital. EMS units are on standby. While everyone is stacking up on the door, this guy goes for the gold. He goes deeper and with a final Hail Mary pulls for all it's worth. Out comes his hand with a large piece of skin in it. Following that was a large pile of his innards, with his stomach contents laying on the floor and his innards running from the pile back into his behind. We enter the cell. The guy starts fighting us. We manage to pin him to the floor and restrain him. Every one of us is covered in this guy's poop. His butt is still bleeding like a spigot. EMS staff comes in and puts his guts in a bucket. A doctor had come in and forced him under with a sedative. EMS put him on a gurney, put the bucket of guts on top of his stomach and hauled him off to the hospital. Guy ended up surviving with a one-way ticket to the mental ward.
Who's the most entitled person you know? My criminal brother made me commit fraud and then dragged my elderly mother to jail with him. I'm set to inherit a good portion of land, as is my brother. The two properties are approximately the same size and have the same valuation. My mother decided that it would be beneficial to everyone to go ahead and give us the property so we could buy a home or whatever in order to get around inheritance taxes and probate when she eventually passes. Well, I decided to list mine with a real estate agent in September of last year. Trusting my mother to do the right thing, I didn't ask her to go ahead and deed everything over. I just asked her to sign the paperwork and I was going to handle everything else. Here's what happened. My EV lives in jail. Well, not literally, but he's there enough that all the detention officers know him well. He can't leave the house without being charged with a felony, all of which are valid charges. See, he's an unrepentant a-hole and does not care about anything else. There's a long list of all the truly screwed up things he's done, none of which I feel like rehashing, but rest assured that all of the charges are born of a fatal combination of arrogance and stupidity. My mother continues to support him because to her my children are just the same in my eyes. Well, after we listed the property he got in trouble again for what feels like the 100th time. What does she do because her sweet baby boy can't possibly spend more time in jail? She signs a bond with the county using all of her properties, including what's supposed to go to me and her own personal home. She never told me any of this, so here I go into what looks like a good future never knowing that I'm engaging in criminal activity, thinking that I'm going to buy my own house. The land was sold. We're under contract with the buyer. My family is working on what we assume to be our new house. She even helped clean it out, all the while knowing all of this. Closing time comes. The lawyer runs a title check one more time, and what does he find? The bond. So the lawyer finds out and tells me. Cue multiple frantic phone calls between me, the lawyer, my real estate agent and my mother. Turns out, she signed the bond in December after the property was listed in good faith, thus committing fraud. I've been told outright, poorly executed, lies. Lies in which she always gets caught. She told me that she didn't realize that mine was included in the bond. Then she says that she didn't realize that the land would sell so fast, so she had until August to have it figured out. She always trips herself up. She tells me a convoluted, complicated lie about contacting her lawyer and a bail bondsman and how it will all work out just fine in time for the closing. She says he's going to surrender himself. She says a lot of things, all lies. I can't trust her as far as I can throw her, which I now know. So here we are. The land is still under contract, he's still free, and she's still going to lose her house, all because of this total piece of garbage who couldn't care less about any of this. All he cares about is sticking a needle up his arm. Yesterday I told her about some casual, Google-related research that I've done. She knew that the buyers could sue her for breach of contract, but she didn't realize that felony criminal charges could be filed against her for fraud, given the value of the property. Now she's scared and actually doing something when it's her own hide on the line. Friday evening I realized that I hadn't heard from my mother since Thursday morning, so I tried to call her. Given her age and medical problems, I try to check on her as much as I can, but Friday she never answered or called back. I called her all day Saturday, but she didn't answer or call back. I dropped by her house and nobody home, but the door was unlocked. I thought that she had just stepped out to the store, so I left her a note and took the kid to the movies, and here is where it gets interesting. I had a message waiting from a person that I didn't even know existed, much less interacted with. The message was basically, your mom and brother are in jail in a faraway county. Her bond is $75,000 and his is $1 million. I flipped out. No way do I have the 10% required for a bondsman for her. He can rot in there as far as I'm concerned, but an elderly woman with huge medical problems who has never spent time at jail doesn't need to be there. She never called me herself, it took a random stranger to tell me. So I spent Sunday calling the jail to make sure she had her meds, feeding her dogs and locking down her house to make sure that if any of my brother's friends came around they wouldn't rob her blind. When I went to do the lockdown, there was a man there. A man who had been living in her basement. She's very naive, and with anyone else besides those in her family, especially those she deems unfortunate, she helps. This guy started promising that he would help her out and watch the place to make sure nobody came around. I wanted to believe him because holy cow does she have a lot of animals, and Lord knows I can't just sit there to make sure that her property is safe. But as my wonderful husband pointed out, anyone who has anything to do with my brother is probably no good. Yesterday afternoon my husband and I went to her house and we caught 3 friends scaling her fence, intending to go up her very long, very steep driveway on foot because her gate was closed and locked. We ran them off. It wasn't pretty, but I've lost every ounce of patience with these people. Upon getting home, I called the sheriff's office non-emergency line, explained the situation to them and asked that they step up patrols on her street. I should have called 911 when I saw those people, but I didn't. They were already aware of the situation as they're familiar with my brother and his ways and agreed to drive by a couple more times. I also described the people and their vehicle, just in case. About 2 hours later I received a text. They just arrested 5 people at your mom's house. What's a story you've been wanting to tell, but no one has asked yet? It's about this one Halloween, a couple of years ago. My boyfriend and I were at our doorstep, all set with a big bowl of candy for the neighborhood kids. We didn't anticipate the swarm of witches, superheroes, and ghosts that would come our way, and before we knew it, our candy stash was running low. Realizing we were about to be the only house on the block to run out of treats, my boyfriend volunteered to run to the store for reinforcements. Just a few minutes after he left, he called me, barely containing his excitement, to tell me about this amazing little kid he bumped into. He was in a costume that was far from average. It was a very well-crafted train, and not just any train, but Oliver the Tank Engine. Yeah, you might not know him. Everyone assumes Thomas the Tank Engine is the only train on the rails, but not this kid. This little kid had been having a tough night because everyone thought he was Thomas. So, there I was, waiting eagerly by the door, when I hear a shy knock. I swung the door open, and there it was, the most elaborate, cardboard-crafted train costume complete with wheels and a chimney. It even had an area in the chimney spout that opened and you put the candy in. The moment I laid eyes on him, I'm all like, oh my goodness, it's Oliver. Oliver the Tank Engine. I love Oliver. He's my favorite. His face instantly transformed. It was like I'd flipped a switch and just made his entire world. The kid lost it, and so did his dad. He was so freaking happy that I knew he was Oliver and not Thomas. His dad was filming everything. He looked so happy and shocked that I knew he was Oliver. As they were walking away, I kept hearing the kid say to his dad, "She knew I was Oliver. She knew I was Oliver." I then closed the door and cried. It was so precious.
Tomorrow I'm breaking off my engagement. Last week I, 25 meters, found out that my fiancé, 24F, cheated with her boss. I'm not sure of his age, but he's in his mid-40s. I also know he's married and he has 3 kids. This happened last November on a work trip while out of town. They had sex 3 times. How do I know? Well, her boss's wife messaged me on Facebook and told me. She's also provided me with screenshots of texts and emails between them. Graphic discussions about how they cheated on us. Also how they got over on us and they joke about it. But then she'll tell him in the same text that she loves me, so this can never come out. The boss's wife, who seems very sweet, I've met her at company functions before, is understandably enraged and heartbroken and is having him served with divorce papers tomorrow. She's also going to drop a friendly email to their HR department. So I'm sitting here on my phone typing this and she's across from me on the sofa on the computer planning a honeymoon trip for after a wedding she has no idea is never going to happen. She's completely oblivious to the fact that her life is going to fall apart tomorrow. I don't feel any sympathy at all since mine fell apart last week, and every time I read those texts and emails I feel like someone is sticking a knife in my heart. 3 years down the drain. I'm just thankful I found out before we got married. I guess there's that to be thankful for. She has no idea, but I took a vacation day tomorrow. After she leaves for work I'm going to go around my place and collect up all her stuff, box it up and have it sitting by the door. Then I have to figure out if I can get any of the money I've already laid out for the wedding back. It was supposed to happen in October, but, yeah, that's not happening. And when she comes home I'm going to throw her out of my apartment and out of my life. I've debated posting all those screenshots on her Facebook page, but my sister talked me out of it. I also debated calling her parents. I feel bad for them as they are such great people and I'm going to miss her mother-in-law. They've accepted me as one of their own and I don't know what they're going to say, but I've decided that she can explain herself to them. I don't want to hear her excuses or her lies. At this point I just want her out of my life so I can figure out what the hell I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Tomorrow I'm breaking off my engagement. Last week I, 25 male, found out that my fiancé, 24 female, cheated with her boss. I'm not sure of his age, but he's in his mid-40s. I also know he's married and he has 3 kids. This happened last November on a work trip while out of town. They made love 3 times. How do I know? Well, her boss's wife messaged me on Facebook and told me. She's also provided me with screenshots of texts and emails between them, graphic discussions about how they cheated on us, also how they got over on us and they joke about it. But then she'll tell him in the same text that she loves me, so this can never come out. The boss's wife, who seems very sweet, I've met her at company functions before, is understandably enraged and heartbroken and is having him served with divorce papers tomorrow. She's also going to drop a friendly email to their HR department. So I'm sitting here on my phone typing this and she's across from me on the sofa on the computer planning a honeymoon trip for after a wedding she has no idea is never going to happen. She's completely oblivious to the fact that her life is going to fall apart tomorrow. I don't feel any sympathy at all since mine fell apart last week, and every time I read those texts and emails I feel like someone is impaling my heart. 3 years down the drain, I'm just thankful I found out before we got married. I guess there's that to be thankful for. She has no idea, but I took a vacation day tomorrow. After she leaves for work I'm going to go around my place and collect up all her stuff, box it up and have it sitting by the door. Then I have to figure out if I can get any of the money I've already laid out for the wedding back. It was supposed to happen in October, but yeah, that's not happening. And when she comes home I'm going to throw her out of my apartment and out of my life. I've debated posting all those screenshots on her Facebook page, but my sister talked me out of it. I also debated calling her parents. I feel bad for them as they are such great people and I'm going to miss her family. They've accepted me as one of their own and I don't know what they're going to say, but I've decided that she can explain herself to them. I don't want to hear her excuses or her lies. At this point I just want her out of my life so I can figure out what the hell I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Update: wow, I cannot believe the response this post has gotten. I can safely say the bomb has dropped. Around 8 or so my phone started going nuts. Calls from her with voicemails after each call. I knew right away what was going on. So I immediately called my sister to tell her that it was happening. She told me to stay strong and if I wanted her to she would come to my place and sit with me, so she's doing that. Then I had a very difficult phone conversation with my ex's mother. Jesus, I can't believe I have an ex now. Difficult because this woman has done nothing to deserve the pain I could hear in her voice. Her whole family has been nothing but accepting of me since day one. I calmly as I could explained the situation to her mother and told her that I can't find it in myself to forgive this and that I'm going to be asking her to move out. Although she was very upset, her mother seemed to understand why I feel this way. She offered as well to come to my place and help my ex get her things. I think this is a pretty good idea. Then I texted a few of my closest friends about this situation. I've been getting bombed with texts from them since, but have said as soon as I can I will talk to them, but right now I'm completely overwhelmed. I listened to one voicemail from my ex and it was what I expected, crying and asking me to call her because we really need to talk. I called her back and she didn't answer, so I started to text her when she called me. Immediately she's telling me how sorry she is. Why did I call her mom? Why did I involve other people? So I lost it and asked how she thinks I feel having to go get tested for STDs because my fiancé cheated on me. Do you know how embarrassing that is? So at least she didn't deny what she did. I told her she needs to come this afternoon and get her stuff out of my place, and that we are finished. She said we'll talk more later, but I cut her off and said there's not a whole lot to talk about, is there? I also asked her how her and this guy could talk shit about me and his wife, like they made fun of her for gaining weight after having 3 kids. This poor woman didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve this. I also said something to her about not trying to say she felt pressured because the guy is her boss. Her texts show clearly that she was a more than willing participant in all this. I guess she's got to meet with HR at work today and the whole place is gossiping about the two of them. I can't feel sorry for either of them at this point. I'm already emotionally drained and it's not even 10 a.m. where I'm at. So once she's done with her HR meeting I guess she's going to come here and get her stuff. I'm hoping it goes without much drama. My sister should be here and I hope her mom comes with her. My landlord also says she'll be around and she's also going to have my locks changed hopefully either this afternoon or tomorrow. I know this is like a long babbling post, but I was trying to remember a lot of things I said and my mind is raving right now.
Gamers, what is the craziest thing you've ever heard over open mic? I have legitimately heard someone on my team break up with a girl during a game of CSGO competitive. He was using open mic and she was like, "Get off that stupid game. Take me out to dinner," in this horribly entitled voice. After around 10 minutes of him being calm and saying things like, "It's okay baby, just let me finish this game. I will get punished if I leave," and her just not understanding that, she issued an ultimatum. "If you don't turn that game off right now and take me to dinner, I'm leaving." He just typed in chat, "Pause please. Need to break up with my girlfriend." And everyone showed up on the site, while our team was filling in the other team by typing in alt chat. We let the in-game clock run, and the dude just went ballistic. "This is my apartment. You stay here on my dime. I buy you all your food. I give you money to go shopping. You don't get to issue ultimatums to me when you don't have shit without me. Get the hell out of my apartment. This relationship is over." Three was lots of her crying and yelling. She was bringing up all this stuff he did wrong in the past, as if that was going to help. And eventually he just said, "Sorry, the relationship is over. I don't care. Bring a truck and one of those douchebag bar guys you love to bang so much to get your stuff tomorrow. See if any of them are willing to clothe, feed, house, and get out of my life." Everyone on voice chat just went ooh. We continued to type everything that was happening to the enemy team, and judging by their text response, they were also going ballistic. He eventually got her out of the apartment, and boy, did it sound like the guy had a world of pressure off his shoulders. Since we were on defense and the clock ran out, our team ended up getting a free round. We gave the other team a free round, so the game was back to being even. After the game, I friended him. We still talk on Steam sometimes. He really ended the relationship and ended up just putting all her stuff in a storage locker when she didn't come get it for a week. He has a new girl now who apparently isn't as awful.
I just threw my autistic son of 30 years onto the street. No regrets. He is mid-high functioning. In middle school, he was, I would say, about above average. He was a maths prodigy, made up his own language, aced his classes and was a whiz, although socially stunted. Then puberty hit, he stopped going outside, and he started destroying his, mine, and the wife's property. We loved him enough to let it slide though, and he lived with us along with the occasional stay at a psych ward. Yesterday he killed our family cat after having a meltdown due to us trying to take his computer away after me and my wife caught him watching anime H-word of girls who looked to be about 5. He threw my prized high school football trophy, wherein I won state, at the poor cat, causing its skull to split and its brains to spill out. I just about had it with him, wailed on him, threw him on the curb, and tossed his computers and gaming systems with him and told him if he ever came back I would unalive him. Haven't seen him since.
What loophole did you exploit for years before someone found out? There is an app for a local burger chain where it allows you to roll the dice to get a code for a free double patty burger upgrade. It was designed so you could only try it once per day and it even shows the date of the roll on the code so the cashier could verify it. However, I found out that you can just change the date on your phone and try again immediately. If you got nothing, change it again and just keep going until you get the code. Then, when you got the code, you change the date back to current date and the app updates the code so it looks like you rolled it today. I got free burger upgrades for years until they finally got rid of the feature altogether. I don't know if anyone ever figured out this exploit. They removed it for other reasons. Years ago I was a season ticket holder for an awful NBA team. My tickets came electronically via PDF. I had okay seats in the upper part of the lower bowl, but nothing great. Anyway, on nights where I knew it would be empty, which was most nights unless a superstar like Kobe or LeBron was in town, I would use the full version of Adobe Acrobat to edit the PDFs to indicate a much better seat location than mine. The barcode still scanned just fine because I didn't mess with it, but when the usher took my printout all he saw was that I was sitting on the floor. Got away with it for years until the team actually got good for a while and the place was packed.
Thought my boyfriend got home from work. It wasn't my boyfriend. My boyfriend, who I live with, works as a teacher in a town about 15 minutes away by train. He gets home more or less at the same time every day, give or take an hour or so. I, on the other hand, work from home. In late January of this year we'd gotten in a pretty big fight about something stupid. I can't even remember what it was about now, but it was one of those fights where we didn't speak to each other, text, call, or anything the whole next day. So, this afternoon I was lying in bed getting work done. It was a Tuesday, and I was pretty sure his last class finished at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays, meaning he'd surely be home at 2:30. Around 1 p.m. I heard the front door open and shut. I thought, I guess he's home an hour early today. It was normal for him to skip his last class every once in a while, so I didn't really think anything of it. In fact, I was mostly mentally preparing for the awkward post-fight "hey how's it going" conversation. So I continued to lie in bed and do my work and wait for him to come in and change his clothes. The bedroom door was closed and I had earplugs half in, as I usually do when I'm working, but I could hear the heavy footsteps of him walking around the apartment, as he always does. If we hadn't been mid-fight and I wasn't so preoccupied with the awkwardness of it all, I might have noticed it was strange how slow the footsteps were or how long he spent walking around the living room. But I was caught up in the dramatics of the fight and didn't think about it. I was just lying there, waiting for him to finally come in. Finally, the bedroom door slowly opened just a few inches. I turned my head towards the door and prepared to give him a sort of awkward "we've been fighting for 24 hours" smile. But the door didn't open more than a few inches. I looked and saw that it was a woman's hand with red nail polish on the doorknob. Whoever was there slowly closed the door just as they had opened it. Without entering the room, I jumped out of bed, ripped out my earplugs, and sort of froze there for a few seconds while thinking rapidly. That was not my boyfriend. Someone else was in my house. Then I thought, could that have been his mom? His sister? The landlady? For some reason I concluded that surely it was his mom or sister. So I opened the bedroom door and walked into the living room. There wasn't anyone there, but the room smelled heavily of women's perfume. Then I came to my senses and realized, his mom and sister don't have keys and have never come over before. The landlady has never entered without permission. This was a stranger. I ran back into the bedroom and shut the door, now shaking heavily. There is a balcony connected to the bedroom, so despite the cold January rain, I stood on the balcony and called my boyfriend. He picked up, and I asked him if his mom or sister might come over unannounced. He told me, "No, don't move, I'm calling the police." The police were there in minutes and searched the whole apartment. Of course, nobody was there by this point. It was weird, though. Nothing was missing from the apartment despite us keeping a jar full of money right at the entrance. Nothing was even touched. In fact, it seemed like the intruder came straight to the bedroom, saw my legs on the bed, panicked, and left. Plus, you can't open that big wooden front door without a key. For a few days, my boyfriend and I were convinced it was just the landlady being nosy. I began to feel better. Nevertheless, we demanded that the landlady change our locks. When she came to change them with her husband, she made a discovery. There was a square area by the keyhole that had been scratched away with something. The landlady said surely someone used tools to break into the apartment. She also didn't have red nails. Then, a day or two later, my boyfriend told me, "I have to tell you something, but don't freak out." He told me that the orange kitchen scissors were missing. I obviously freaked out. I tore the apartment apart, looking for those scissors. It's been 6 months, and those scissors are gone. So the whole thing is just creepy and weird. A stranger breaks into a nice apartment but doesn't touch or take anything valuable, takes scissors from the kitchen, goes straight to the bedroom, sees someone in bed, and immediately leaves. I'm curious, but I hope I never find out what happened. My entitled wife tried to embarrass me by flirting with another man and called me a mama's boy. But she regretted it instantly once I threatened to leave her on the spot. I recently took my wife on a vacation abroad because I thought it would help resolve a fight that we were having. But she decided to use the vacation as an excuse and do something unbelievable. Let me quickly tell you how ridiculous our fight was first. 1 year ago, her parents needed some money because they wanted to do a few repairs around their house. I agreed to send over a substantial amount because I wanted to help them, and even went over to help with the labor. My wife was really happy and thanked me a lot. I did it because I consider them my parents as well, and we are a family. A similar situation happened a month ago, where my mother needed some financial help. She is a single mom and has struggled her entire life, but never asked me for help before this. So I was really eager to finally give her a helping hand, and sent over the same amount that I had sent to my wife's parents. However, my wife didn't like this at all. She argued that I should have asked her before sending over money, and that my mom was most likely lying about needing help. I argued by saying that she had no reason to lie, and even if she was indeed lying, I still wanted to send her money. So my wife ended up calling me a mama's boy and said that I am ruining our marriage by making decisions without her opinion. I asked her that she didn't hesitate to send money over when her own parents asked for help, so how is this any different? After that, she has been ignoring me because she thinks I'm trying to gaslight her. I decided that it wasn't worth fighting over, and booked tickets for us to go to another country and cool our nerves down. I did this because I loved my wife, and wanted us to stop fighting. She was really delighted to go on this trip, and forgave me when I showed her the tickets. The hotel we were staying at had a pool and a spa, so she was really excited to experience it. Everything was going well, we landed safely and had a wonderful ride to the hotel. But as soon as we entered our room, my wife's tone changed completely. She proposed that while on this trip, we should act separately and not as a couple. I asked her why, and she said that she hadn't actually forgiven me, and needed to take some time off for herself without me hanging over her shoulder. But I rejected the idea because there is no way I'm leaving her alone in a country where something could easily go wrong. She was really mad that her proposal wasn't accepted, and kept ignoring me for the majority of our trip. My entire mood had been spoiled and I was considering ending it early and just going home. Little did I know, my wife was planning something sinister. After we went to the beach, we decided to spend some time at the bar. I thought that my mood would improve after having a few drinks and we could make up. But as soon as we sat down, she began talking to another guy. I literally saw her being extremely flirty with this guy, and responding to all his compliments even though I was sitting right next to her. I was about to say something when the other guy asked if she was with someone. To my absolute surprise, she replied, "No, I'm here alone and would love to keep talking with you." Before he could say something in response, one of his friends called him. He said he'll be right back and left. I grabbed my wife's arm and asked what the F she thought she was doing. And this is what she said to me: "Oh, you didn't like that? Well, that is what happens when you don't listen to me. Consider it my revenge on you, Mr. Mama's boy. Now, do you think I should spend some more time with him, or are you ready to do as I say?" I couldn't believe that she was actually thinking that cheating on me would make me listen to her. Over the last month, her arguments about me supporting my mother had really gotten on my nerves, and this was the last straw. So I ended up telling her, "Don't worry, you can do whatever you want. Because as of this moment, you and I are done. I am leaving you right here, and you can go sleep with that guy." As I tried to walk off, she hurriedly grabbed my arm and stopped me from leaving. She began saying that she was joking and that she loved him, and didn't want to leave me. She actually had the audacity to say that her flirting with another man in front of me was just a prank. But I was having none of it, and just booked a taxi to the hotel. She followed me and kept apologizing, but I contacted my lawyer right in front of her and told him to start preparing the divorce papers. The look on her face when she realized that she would no longer be able to enjoy the life I provided for her was immensely satisfying. My attention-seeking wife keeps flashing her boobs, so I gave her a taste of her own medicine. My wife and I have been together for 11 years, married for just over 5 years. Ever since I met her in college, she has been insecure about her appearance, specifically her body. When we got our first jobs out of college and became financially stable, she approached me and asked how I felt about her getting a honker job. I wasn't a huge fan of the idea. I told her I loved her how she is and that I didn't think she needed one. I just think they look oddly perky and not natural, and I've dated women in the past with varying chest size and would prefer a woman with flat boobs compared to someone with fake ones. But knowing how much it has bothered her, I told her I would support her decision either way, but I wish I never did. After thinking about it for a while, she approached me again to ask if I was still serious with my answer and that she was going to proceed with the operation. I wasn't sure how to feel about it at first. I thought about talking her out of it, but wanted to stand by my original answer and support her either way. So she did get a honker job. Her surgeon was fantastic and things did end up looking very good considering my prior opinion. The problem I've had is ever since she got her honker job, it's definitely made her put them on display. She went from wearing baggy and unrevealing clothing to very tight and revealing shirts with a lot of cleavage. I'm not enjoying the fact that she is willing to show people her bare breasts. It's no secret to anyone that has known her for a long time that she got a honker job. At first, it was mostly her just showing her girlfriends, which was still weird to me but didn't really cross a boundary for me. However, it's almost as if the more and more she's shown them off and gotten validation, the more and more enabled she is to continue doing it. The first time it crossed a boundary for me was when we were at a friend's house for dinner and drinks, and she had a little too much to drink and showed her girlfriend her breasts while her girlfriend's husband was standing right there. She pulled her breasts open in front of everyone sitting on the table. While driving back home I confronted her about her actions but she just replied by saying, "Don't you want to show everyone how great my new guns are?" I realized that she was still drunk and decided to wait until we got home. The next morning I tried to set boundaries with her but she accused me of controlling her and started crying. I thought that maybe this was a one-time thing, but I was wrong. Most recently, we were at a friend's house with many other mutual friends watching a football game, and she got drunk again. Upon our team scoring, she lifted her shirt and flashed her breasts at the entire party while jumping up and down in celebration. She's not even a football fan and hardly understands who to cheer for. To me it was like an excuse to just show off her breasts to everyone. I had enough and we had an argument again. She got defensive and turned it around on me, saying that for once in her life she's happy with how she looks and she just wants to feel good about herself. Arguing with her was pointless but there was still one way to fix this situation. The next week when we went for a family dinner with her parents, I decided to do what she does, thinking that she would understand how I felt. While her siblings and parents were eating, I stood up and flashed my pee-pee. Everyone stared at me with shock. My wife started screaming for me to cover up and told her parents that we were leaving. On the drive back home she asked me, "Why the F would you do that?" I told her because I feel good about my pee-pee and want everyone to know about it, just like you want everyone to know about your breasts. She broke down in the car and tried to explain how men always want to see boobs while girls aren't so obsessed. I had enough of her bullshit and told her that the next time she flashes her breasts, I'm going to flash my pee-pee.
What is normal at 3 p.m., but terrifying at 3 a.m.? A phone call from parents/relatives etc. Sound of an ice cream van. I must now buy an ice cream van to drive around at 3 a.m. Children playing outside. Especially flying a kite. Someone knocking on the door. Somebody ringing the bell. A kid's toy going off in a random room. My kids used to have a book that, when opened, played nursery rhymes. It turns out that when the battery is running low the book does two things. 1, it plays the tune even while closed. 2, it plays the tune really slow and in a lower pitch. You can see where this is going, right? Middle of the night me and my husband are woken by Twinkle Twinkle Little Star being croaked at us from under our toddler's bed. A child laughing. There's nothing more precious than a child's laughter, unless it's 3 in the morning and you don't have kids. The sound of a branch breaking when you're outside.
What are some psychological hacks about love? 1. Women give physical boundaries to those they like as a test to see if you are trying to take advantage of them, trying to one and done her, or she does this for her own self-respect. But for everything I'm about to tell you below, it is all in how you react when she tells you no. If you grovel, you lose. Show her you don't care if you have intimacy or not, and stay cool. She will appreciate this and most likely sleep with you anyway if she wants. Because there is no longer pressure. And she feels attracted because you aren't chasing her for the one thing she has power over you for. Show her she can't control you with this and it will drive her crazy. 2. The power of touch and eye contact can hypnotize a woman and emotionally build passion. Provided she likes you. If she doesn't like you, you'll know. Giving her soft caresses on the neck, and down her arm, while looking her dead in the eyes and listening to her, can create a vulnerable connection that subtly builds passion. 3. How you feel around one another sets the stage for your whole relationship. If you are mad all the time, irritated, depressed, grumpy, etc., it will set the mood over time and create the dynamics you have together. 4. Give her the gift of missing you. Distance is always sexy, it is something primal and dangerous to them that there's a possibility you might die in battle and not make it back. 5. An attractive woman has many options but this is all irrelevant, remember you are an asset, her belief that you are the best for her comes in the belief in yourself. 6. Be in your flow and don't focus on them so much. Have your own life. If you need her to be happy, and she senses this, it will begin a loss of attraction. And if you need him to be happy, remember no one person is responsible for your happiness. 7. Remembering little facts or things they care about is a big deal. The little things usually equal up to big things. Pay attention. 8. It is much harder to go back and retrain someone how you want to be treated than to be consistent from the start. Letting someone know you mean business and won't tolerate their crap will keep them in check. 9. Never emotionally react to her poop test. She is testing you to see how you handle it. If you make like the lion in the Sahara and remain cool and calm, yet unbothered by your environment, nothing, not even her words, can get to you. She will think this beyond sexy. On the opposite side of this, do not tolerate someone's bad behavior. Just leave. 10. Cooking his favorite meal after he had a long day at work is probably the best thing you could do for him. 11. Someone is more likely to change a habit you don't like permanently if you are more understanding about it, and don't chastise but instead be honest with how it makes you feel. 12. Being thoughtful and doing an act of service without being told will make her fall in love with you over and over. As long as she doesn't expect it and it isn't too often. 13. Staying in the nest too long is a bad move for a man. If he stops working, and stops giving her time to miss him, she will grow sick of him and begin to resent his presence. 14. Making the decisions so she doesn't have to worry is always a great quality she respects. 15. He will love you that much more if you remember the details about his hobby or passion, and genuinely care about what he is into. 16. Name calling and insults can cause irreversible damage. The fastest way to put a wedge in intimacy. 17. During the heat of an argument, sometimes walking away and blowing off steam is better than saying things you can't take back. 18. Never get complacent in a relationship. Just because you are with someone doesn't mean you should let yourself go. Instead, work even harder at being better. The better you are, the harder it is for them to let you go. 19. Planning something for a special occasion will get you lots of points. 20. Remember that giving someone what they want when they ask for it all the time does nothing but turn you into a fool. Instead, learn to tell them no. Watch your sexy go up. I gave my husband an allowance and he went over it. My husband and I have an allowance system that prevents a lot of arguments about incidental spending. Both of our salaries go into a joint account for all bills, investments, and agreed upon purchases. The allowance is a smaller amount, $50 $100/week, but always equal for each of us, that gets moved to separate accounts for each of us, with the understanding that we can spend this money on whatever, no permission needed. Usually it's spent on individual hobbies/splurges. This works well for us. Today, I was looking through my husband's credit card bill that I had used recently, with his permission, to make some travel arrangements. We don't keep any secret bills. This credit card is auto-paid from our joint account. I saw a $73 charge on YouTube and asked him about it. He said he didn't remember buying anything, so I dug further. Turns out he had subscribed to YouTube TV last December to watch a football game on a road trip and forgot about it. I had no idea because this was his YouTube account, his email notifications, his credit card. The total charges added up to about $675. I admit I was annoyed and made some short comments. You should always set a reminder to cancel these things. If you were responsible about checking your emails, this might not have happened. There is a history of him being irresponsible with bills and missing important emails. I manage almost all the finances. We're in good shape, but I hate the idea of waste. We weren't even utilizing that expensive subscription. He paid that money to watch one thing 10 months ago. I told him that to be fair he'd have to pay the $675 out of his fun money. He had more than enough in there because he was saving for a bigger hobby purchase. I canceled the YouTube subscription on his phone, then used the banking app on my phone to move the money from his allowance account back to the joint account. I probably should have asked him to move the money himself, but I was upset. I felt more calm after doing the dollar transfer because to me the matter was then settled. He got irritated and said he shouldn't have to pay out of his allowance for a simple mistake. I said everyone has to pay for their mistakes. That's how life works. Maybe I was harsh. But the wasted money was all on him. I don't see any better way to resolve it. He pointed out that we are doing fine financially. We are fortunate that $675 out of the joint account won't affect our budgeting for the month, but it will make a tremendous difference to his savings for his hobbies as it is close to 2 months' allowance. It was the principle of the matter to me. I'm very careful with money. No matter how well we do financially, I'll always stick by his side and look for good deals and avoid profligate spending.
I think my husband is sleeping with a babysitter. I'm still trying to process this in my mind while typing this out. My husband and I have been together for 6 years, and married for 4. We have 2 children, a 2-year-old and 4-year-old. Both of us work full-time. I'm realtor and husband owns his own business. We've had a number of different nannies in the past. Sometimes our parents end up watching the kids. About 8 months ago my husband told me that one of his friend's daughter, Ella, 20 female, was looking for a part-time job during college. We live in a small college town, so her commute wouldn't be far. We tried her out one night, and it went smoothly. She's always been nice to me, and the kids love her. My suspicions started last month when I came home early to find my husband had been home. Ella was also at the house babysitting. I asked my husband why he didn't send her home if he was home. His response was, she's just trying to make a little money, and that the kids were having fun. Then 2 weeks ago I drove by my husband's office on the way to a meeting, and her car was parked there. I asked my husband later about what Ella was doing at the office. He said that she probably stopped by to see her dad. Now when I come home, Ella is always dressed up more with makeup done, and heels on. 2 days ago I found strands of blonde hair in the back seat of my husband's truck. I have blonde hair, but this was closer to Ella's shade. Also I don't think my husband would do anything in the back seat since he's 6'6", 240 pounds. Last night I found the opportunity to check my husband's phone while he was with the kids. I didn't find any romantic texts between them, but I could definitely tell that text messages had been deleted. If you read the conversation it didn't make sense, because it was obviously missing the middle part. I talked to my friend this morning, and she pointed out that my husband has a type, blonde women. Ella falls perfectly in that category. Should I confront him right now, or should I wait to find something more concrete? Update 1, Nanny is currently at the house right now. I tracked husband using Find My iPhone, and he's also headed home, a 30-minute drive. They both think I'll be working until 7 p.m. today. I'm going to walk into the house 15 minutes after my husband gets home unannounced. Not sure what the plan is if I catch them. I unfortunately don't have access to his phone logs, since his phone plan is through his business. We have cameras on the outside of the house. We have a baby monitor near the kid's bed. I'm not ready to fire her unless I get solid evidence of my husband cheating. I need to know if my husband is having any sort of romantic relationship with her first. Update 2. I wasn't able to get the concrete evidence I was looking for, but some more circumstantial evidence. I tracked husband through Find My iPhone. He stopped on his way home at the grocery store for 10 minutes. I decided to park and wait on a side street. That way I could see when my husband would get home. Husband got home at 5:30 p.m. Ella was scheduled to work until 6 p.m. We have a long gravel driveway that leads to our house. I decided to park near the barn so I wouldn't be heard pulling up to the house. I walked in the front door and found Ella feeding my 4-year-old. She was also preparing dinner in the kitchen. Today she had on a tight top, skirt, and platform heels. I asked if she knew where my husband was. She replied he was upstairs taking a shower. She then immediately went over to the living room to pick up her phone and send a text message to someone. Also in the living room were a fresh bouquet of flowers. I asked her about the flowers, and she said a guy she's been seeing gave them to her today. She said she didn't want to leave them in the car, so she brought them inside. I asked her about the guy that she was seeing. She said he was from school, and wasn't sure if it was going anywhere. I went upstairs to see if my husband left his phone in the bedroom. He left his phone on the dresser. Sure enough, the newest text message was from Ella that read, "Your wife is home." I tried looking up the deleted messages on his phone, but they had been permanently deleted. I decided to wait in our bedroom for my husband to come out of the shower. He comes out and is surprised to see me in the bedroom. I told him my 6:30 showing got cancelled. I tried to initiate lovemaking to see how he would react. He said he didn't feel comfortable doing it while Ella was in the house. At this point, Ella was upstairs in my younger son's room, which shares a wall with our room. Ella leaves the house at 6 p.m. with the flowers. After dinner, my husband mentioned to me about buying Ella a new car for Christmas, and his reasoning was that her car was old and not safe for our kids to ride in. I told him that I would think about it. I'm thinking about firing her on Monday without telling my husband and see how they both react. I'm still trying to process everything going on. Still hoping all of this is just me overthinking. I really love my husband, and I can't stand the thought of our beautiful family splitting up. Thanks for all the advice. Update 3. Yesterday morning I met up with Ella and told her that we wouldn't be needing her services anymore due to my little sister being available to watch the kids, which is true. She quietly said that she understood and said to let her know if I would change my mind. My husband called me 5 minutes later sounding very upset about Ella being fired. I think Ella told him, but he claimed her dad told him that we fired her. I told him that was my final decision and there was no changing it. He came home 20 minutes later and asked me why I didn't talk to him first about firing her. I told him about everything I've noticed between them, from the texts to the clothing attire she wears. He denied everything and said it was all in my head. I told him if you want this marriage not to end in a divorce, he had to cut all contact with Ella. After 1 hour of arguing, he finally agreed to not contact her anymore. I honestly don't have the mental energy to deal with a divorce, split my kids, and date again. I don't want to be the single mom always busy and unhappy. I told him to never bring her up again. I don't know 100% if they had an affair, but I think it's better for my health not to find out. I think I'm going to quit my job and raise my kids, work on my marriage. I'm not sure if this was all because I've been working a lot of hours and have been distant from my husband. Thanks again for all the support. One more thing, men, please stop messaging me pictures of your private parts on Reddit.
Ada for looking up public records to see why my husband's friend went to prison. I have been married to my husband Jack for around 9 years now. No kids. My husband reconnected with his childhood best friend Denver 5 years ago. He's a really nice guy. I became really close friends with his wife Cassie. We all hang out weekly since they moved super close to us 3 years ago. A few years ago I remember asking my husband why he and Denver lost touch since they get along so well. He kinda shrugged and said, "Oh, you know, life stuff." I was like, "Oh yeah, I get it," and moved on. We invited Denver and Cassie to join us on a week-long camping trip. On the second night we sat by the fire just talking and drinking beers. Denver made a really good meal for us out of just random snack food ingredients. I asked how he learned to make this, and he laughed and said, "Well, in prison you learn to get pretty creative." I tried to hide my surprise but obviously failed. Denver was confused and said, "What, you didn't know?" I mean, I spent the majority of my 20s in prison. He looked at Jack and said, "Seriously dude, you didn't tell her?" Jack just shrugged. I was like him, "No, I didn't know," and tried to pivot the conversation. It was awkward for a split second but we moved on. I assumed Jack didn't tell me because he wanted to respect his friend's privacy. It happened in the past, and it's not my business. However, I'm not gonna lie, I got super curious and looked up his public records to see what happened. After I was like, "Oh okay then, anyways," and didn't think about or bring it up again the rest of the trip. It wasn't until after the trip my husband asked me to be honest with him, and asked if I looked up Denver's records. I shrugged and said yeah I did, but it obviously doesn't matter or change anything. Jack was visibly angry and asked why I didn't ask Denver myself. I was confused and was like, "I didn't think you were supposed to ask stuff like that." He said, "Then wouldn't that give you a clue maybe it's not okay to go poking your nose where it doesn't belong?" I pointed out that Denver was actually surprised I didn't know, so he clearly doesn't treat it like it's some huge secret. I assumed it wasn't a big deal since he mentioned it so casually. I also admitted I was just curious too. Jack then accused me of making it a big deal out of it. I said, "Oh no, I'm not. To be honest, I don't understand why we are even having a conversation about this." Jack yelled at me to stop acting dense and I'm missing the point. I told him if anything he's the one making a huge deal out of it. I didn't even bring it up. He did. Plus it's literally public information anyone can see anonymously. We went back and forth until I called a timeout. We agreed to both take some time to cool our heads and talk it out later. Honestly, I have no idea why he's getting so upset over this. Sure, curiosity killed the cat, but I kept it to myself. I didn't even think to bring it up or make it a conversation even in private with my husband. Because like I said, it doesn't matter to me at the end of the day. It's not like he's a do or beats women, so who am I to judge?
Am I the a-hole for changing my husband's pills after I found out he was cheating on me with the nanny? Me and my husband have been married for 5 years now, before that we dated for 3 years. When we met, he had a 5-year-old autistic daughter and was in the process of divorcing his now ex-wife. I told him clearly that I was child-free, which has allowed me to have a 6-figure salary. I said I didn't want to take care of any child, and he agreed and gave his wife full custody, but because the brat was already attached to him, they decided she could come visit him while I'm not in the house. It all went downhill when his ex-wife got a bacterial infection in her flat boobs and had to stay in the hospital for a while. So my husband agreed to let the girl stay with us while she recovered. I was extremely pissed when I found out about this because I didn't want that brat to be near me. After spending one night with her, I was already exhausted, so I told my husband I'll go stay in a 5-star hotel until she leaves. He agreed with it, although he seemed a little bit nervous. After 3 days of having her there, my husband called me saying he was super stressed and needed help with the kid. I refused to be around her, so I told him to hire a nanny and that I will pay for it. A few more days passed by and I went to our house while he was at work and she was at school because I needed to pick some stuff. Well, to my surprise, I found a thong in our bed, so I looked in his wardrobe and found out a lot of his Viagra pills were missing. I called him and told him to get home right now. When he arrived, he asked me what was wrong. I showed him the evidence and he admitted to cheating with the obese nanny who has twins. I felt heartbroken, but I didn't say anything, just that I needed to think about it. I went back to the hotel and elaborated a plan. So the next day I decided to change his Viagra pills with stimulants. They have the same shape and color. 2 days later he called me saying his blood pressure was up to the roof and he needed my help to get to the hospital. I said he was a liar, cheating a-hole, and he could ask the obese nanny to take him there. That's it, if she happens to fit her fat A into the back seat. I assumed they release him, since the next night I get a call from the hospital saying my husband was there again because of his extremely high blood pressure. I told them I couldn't come since I was on vacation. Not true, but whatever. However, today, 3 days later, they called me again because my husband had suffered a stroke. I honestly think he deserves it after cheating so much with the nanny, but my friends now are blowing up my phone saying how it was funny at first, but now I'm an a-hole because I didn't tell him I changed the pills after the first time he went to the hospital.
As a cashier, what is the boldest thing you ever said to a customer knowing that you might get fired afterwards? I'm sorry, sir. You didn't give me a $10. You gave me a $50. True story. My manager didn't believe me either. What happened was, I was working at the AMC movie theaters as a cashier at Metro Center, heck, way back in 1987, when a man walks up, totally distracted by his 2 kids and wife, and without looking, hands me a $50 to pay for something that totaled maybe $8 bucks. So I handed him his change, $42. Still somewhat distracted and thinking he was being a good guy, he said no, this is too much, and kept insisting, to the point my manager, standing not far watching all this, came up and thanked the guy for his honesty and tried correcting my mistake. I hadn't made a mistake, stood my ground, and eventually the guy, dumbfounded, looked at me and walked away. He was the only customer who'd paid with a bill larger than a $20. I was the only one at the register. In any case, my manager tried reprimanding me, telling me the first rule of customer service is the customer's always right. I was like, that's crap. The customer made a mistake that does not work in his favor. He was distracted, so I'm helping him out. This led to a pretty harsh exchange of words when he wound up trying to fire me. Ultimately, he escalated it to the GM, the only one with firing power, and not only did the GM side with me, but he was relocated to another facility shortly after. I'm all for capitalism, but not when you're literally stealing from a distracted customer's pocket. That's where I draw a firm line between what's moral and ethical and what's not. Teachers, what made you realize your student is a sociopath? Met this kid when he was 2.5, and he was already messed up, super manipulative. He would chase the other kids, trying to hit or kick them. He crafted pretty convincing lies to get other kids in trouble, or blame them for things he did. He did it so well that it often was impossible to know it was a lie, other than that you knew it was him because it was always him. At nap time he would get off the cots and try to body slam all the kids trying to sleep. Eddie Guerrero 5-star frog splash type stuff. If you sat with him he would try to kick you in the face. If you tried to control him, by restraining him, he'd scream that you were hurting him, and my director would come in and threaten to write us up if we touched him again. Nap time was terrible. At 3 he continued the above behaviors but started adding in creepy threats. At age 4 he told my co-teacher he was going to get a firearm online, and the postman was going to bring it to his house. He would bring it to school and unload it in her head when she wasn't looking. He told another teacher he was going to bring a hammer and make her look like applesauce. He was now big enough to throw chairs across the room, and had discovered gouging people's skin off with his fingernails and biting. He was not allowed to have anything even remotely sharp, ever. We pretty much had to be constantly watching him, despite having 19 other kids with 2 teachers. During all of the above behaviors he would intersperse periods of being very sweet. As a teacher, who wants the best for kids and believes they all deserve love and a place to feel safe, you'd think finally, he's opening up to me. We can work with this. We can help him. Even selfishly, I'm the teacher who finally got to him. But that was only new teachers, and we all fell for it at least once. Inevitably it turned out he was using it to get away with things, and when you'd take another kid's side on something where he was clearly in the wrong he'd say, "But I thought you liked me now. I thought you liked me. You hate me, don't you? Nobody loves me," while crying. If you made it clear you didn't buy that, he'd pretty much just scream at you and then turn back into the terror he was. It was just an emotional roller coaster with this kid, honestly. Always holding out hope eventually that little phase of being nice would be the real deal, the time you'd really reached him. By 5 he still wasn't potty trained. One day he showed up with stitches on his face. His grandma said he'd been bitten in the face by their dog and she was going to have it put down. We all immediately wondered what he'd done to the dog. We had real scissors in the pre-K room and the licensing says that all art materials had to be available at all times. We had to watch him because he often tried to injure people with scissors. The director wouldn't listen to reason in regards to putting them up because of him. We were just supposed to do a better job controlling the classroom. He also had begun doing weird things. He would drag smaller kids under the slide or under a table where we'd be less likely to see. He would then try force himself onto them. He was doing this at 5 years old. His grandma insisted we were teaching him this behavior and refused to answer any questions that intimated we thought it was probable that he was being mistreated at home. She'd scream about us accusing his granddaddy and how could we do something like that, and we were all creeps. I don't even remember all of it. We had all called CPS multiple times about this kid, and had never seen any follow through. I had been refusing to work in the room with him anymore because I often had bruises and scratch marks and nothing was being done to support us. We were just supposed to redirect him. If we couldn't control him without saying no or using time out or restraining him in any way, we got in trouble. We were only supposed to redirect. Like give him special treats, thereby further encouraging the behavior and making the other kids feel they had to replicate such behavior if they also wanted special toys, activities, food, whatever. My director was a complete dirtbag. However, when he was about 5.5 we had gotten a new director who immediately decided he was a danger to the other kids and we couldn't control him with any tools we were authorized to use. She suggested he get some outside help and perhaps reduce his time with us until his behavior improved. His grandma withdrew him instead, screaming the whole time about how we always hated her and her baby and now he wasn't going to have anyone to watch him and he was going to get worse because we abandoned him. He later went on to take his grandma's life a few years later and got sent to juvie.